So, hey guys, welcome back to my channel. This is part 1 of What If Naruto Was an Uchiha and also inheriting the dark legacy of Shinto and Greek god. Here, Naruto is the son of Hades and the grandson of the Greek goddess of love. In this fanfic, we will see powerful and mystical versions of Naruto. But don't forget to check out the description box, please do support the original author. Now, let's start the story. Chapter 1. End is a new beginning. Naruto felt no pain, so he opened his eyes. He found himself in an unknown room. The room was large that could easily fit 50 or 60 people, with a large ornate iron spiral staircase leading up to the second and third floors. The room littered with paintings, vases, sets of armor and other items from across the known world, each meticulously organized and catalogued. On the right side was a large archway about 1/3 of the way toward the staircase, and past that, a sliding door that easily blended into the wall if you weren't looking for it. Looking around, he saw a large painting on the wall. It was a painting of a young woman wearing a red variant of Konoha Jounin's uniform, and she was the most beautiful being that he had ever seen. She had alabaster skin that contrasted with her long and dark onyx hair, and a vibrant smile that would light up the darkest and stormiest of days. Naruto didn't know why, but for some reason he could not stop the tears that ran down his face as he gazed at the photo. Who is she? Naruto thought. It is your mother's picture. Who are you? Where are you? How? Look behind. He looked behind and saw a raven there. It was bigger than any normal raven in size and had blood-red eyes. You can talk. It flew above him and landed in front of the picture. It is a ninja thing. My name is Karasu. Karasu said. Is it really my mother's picture? Yes, but she is dead. She looked at his sad face. She loved you. She left you her letter. Naruto looked at the letter. It was beside his mother's picture. Do you know how to read and write? Karasu asked. Yes, masked men have taught me this. Masked men? Anbu, Karasu thought. Naruto looked at his mother's letter as he unfolded it and noticed that it's dotted with smudges. The smudges he realized were tears. Dear son. My name is Uchiha Hitomi and your mother. I waited so long just to see you and to hold you in my arms, and now I have taken away from you. I don't know if I did something to anger Kami in my life or some earlier life to have her take me away from you. I hope you can forgive me for not being there. It hurt so much to know that I won't be able to be there for you, to see you grow up, to see you get married, and to see my grandbabies, to not be there for your birthday, and to experience everything that you go through with you. I had put so much effort into those training schedules and the jutsus on the scrolls. I was hoping that we could have done them together when you had gotten older, but it seems that you will just have to teach them yourself. It's nearly time for me to go, but before I go, one last piece of advice. You don't have to be in Konoha to be great. I know my share of hardship, so I know what I'm talking about. You don't have to stay, you can explore the world, learn new things and become what you want to become. I know the hardships and suffering that one can endure in life, so my one request to you is to live your life to the fullest and never give up until the end, even if you have to leave this village to do so. I wanted to tell you many things, but I don't have time. I know you have many questions. Karasu will explain this entire thing. This is goodbye, my son. I've left my diary along with some of the pictures. Good luck and goodbye to my son. Your mother? Uchiha Hitomi. Naruto looked at Karasu in confusion. My mother's last name was Uchiha, then why is my last name Uzumaki? It was Yondame's wife's last name. Sandaime Hokage gave this name to you to honor their sacrifice. Karasu said. Sacrifice? What do you mean? Now or never, Karasu thought. Did you know how Yondaime killed Kyuubi? Naruto nodded. Well, that is a lie. Karasu said. She told him the story. Sorry guys for interrupting, I am your host, Itachi. What if? But we know the story. How Nine Tails were freed by Tobi. Only difference is that Minato and Kushina's son was born dead. Kushina died because of Nine Tails' extraction. Also trauma she had felt after the death of her only child. Now let's get back to the story. I am third Jinchuriki of Kyuubi. This is only because of that man Tobi. Naruto said angrily as his whole body was surrounded in a thick black chakra. The aura and oppressive weight of his chakra were even more sinister than the Nine Tail. His appearance changed. His hair turned blonde to midnight black. His skin tone became pale white, his nose and facial shape changed. The most shocking thing was his eyes. They had a red 9-point star with a black background in them. Karasu was shocked by his new appearance. Here literally, Naruto is much powerful, like a 5 years old younger Madara. Karasu looked at him and said, you look just like your mother. Hush. What do you mean? Naruto asked. Look at yourself in a mirror. Naruto walked toward the large mirror that was hanging in the hall. Looking in the mirror, he was shocked to see his reflection, specifically his eyes. How? He asked. Sarutobi Hiruzen, Sandaime Hokage placed the henge seal on you. He had originally expected to use it to have you be praised as a hero to the people, and sadly it didn't work. Karasu said. What about my eyes? This is Manjukam Sharingan. It is an advanced form of the Sharingan. I will tell you about it later. Do you know how to use chakra? Naruto nodded in agreement. Come with me. I have one question. How do you turn them off? Naruto asked. Just stop channeling your chakra to your eyes. Karasu said and she started flying. Naruto cut off the chakra flow to his eyes and they turned to dark blue color. Interesting, he has dark blue eyes, it's not black like Uchiha. Karasu thought. Do you know who my father is? Naruto asked hopefully. No, master never told me about him. Karasu said. Sorry. Where are we? Is he trying to change the subject? Karasu thought. We are in the Valley of the End, where Hashirama Senju and Madara Uchiha fought for control of the Konoha village. In this place, Hashirama won the battle, and Madara is believed to have died. We are behind the Madara statue. There is a secret door to this place. Karasu said. Now, we are going to meet someone. Who? Your grandfather. Eh? Just follow me, you will know very soon. Soon they came in front of the large door of the mansion. Naruto opened the door and entered the room. It was big, made from stone, and had weird symbols drawn on the floor and the wall. Karasu looked at Naruto and said, drop your blood on the seal. Naruto noticed there was largest symbol in the center of room. He bit his thumb and dropped some blood on it. Now, channel yours chakra on it. When he did, the seal was lit up with bright light and a white coffin rose from the ground. When the coffin door opened, he saw a tall man. He had long, spiky waist-length black hair with a blue tint. He was wearing a blue suit and gloves with red samurai-like armor. Who is he? Naruto asked in confusion. He is a blood clone of Uchiha Madara, your grandfather. Karasu said. Madara came out of the coffin and looked at Naruto and asked, who are you? His tone was cold. I am Naruto was too afraid to say anything to him. He is Hitomi's son and your grandson. Karasu said to Madara. My grandson? Madara looked at Naruto. He looks just like me when I was his age. The only difference is our eyes. His eye color is dark blue, while mine is black. Madara thought. What is your name? Madara asked. His tone was now soft. Yuzu Uchiha Naruto. Naruto said. Where is your mother? Madara asked. Naruto looked down sadly. She is dead, Karasu said. She told him the story. Madara's eyes changed in its eternal Manjukyu Sharingan form. He released a large amount of killing intent. Those lowlifes, weakling, how dare they, if real I would still be alive and then Konoha would be nothing but ashes. He had controlled his anger and looked at Naruto with a soft gaze. But I don't have time for them. I am here to train my grandson. He reached out his right hand and put it on Naruto's head. He smiled at him. Are you ready for your training? I am ready, Grandpa. Naruto said as his eyes changed in Manjukyu Sharingan. Manjukam Sharingan. At this young age, Madara smiled. He is truly my grandson. 7 years later. Madara was watching his 12-year-old grandson who was practicing his kata above lake water. That is enough, Naruto. He shouted over his grandson. Naruto stopped practicing and came out from the lake in front of Madara. You have completed your training, Naruto. There is nothing more I can teach you. Now, this is the time to give you my goodbye gift. Madara said. Naruto looked at his grandfather and asked, what kind gift? You have already given me part of Hashirama Senju power. I am giving you my power, my real eyes, my Sharingan. Konoha Academies. Alright everyone, again I congratulate you on graduating from the academy. You are now real ninjas of this village and this isn't training anymore. Remember what you learned and you'll be fine. I expect you to do your duties with utmost diligence and not to dishonor your village. From now on you'll be placed into teams of 3 under the tutelage of your Jounin sensei. Team 1. Iruka has begun droning as Sasuke's fans waited who among them will end up on his squad. There were a lot of possibilities. Team 7 under Jounin had a Kakashi, Haruno Sakura, Uchiha Sasuke. Iruka winced as the little banshee screamed in victory and Uzumaki Naruto. Valley of the End. Naruto stared at the Sasuke. It was silent for a few moments. So then dope. You and me, fighting each other like Senju Hashirama and Uchiha Madara. Sasuke chuckled. Interesting to see that history repeats itself. Naruto scoffed at those words. Except there's one major difference between you and Madara. Madara was an exceedingly calm person and strong. He smirked lightly. You are far from that point. Sasuke scowled at Naruto with anger. Chidori, 1,000 birds, Sasuke yelled. He had his hand covered in lightning as he charged at Naruto who stood there with a bored look. Die dope. The lightning attack was mere inches from his heart when Naruto grabbed his wrist, sent out a chakra burst that stopped the chirping bird's attack. Kakashi never really taught you proper use of assassination techniques, did he? He slammed his knee upwards on Sasuke's elbow, he cried out in pain hearing a crack. He didn't stop as he roundhouse kicked Sasuke in the head and sent him skidding across the water top. He sighed to himself as he walked atop the water. This is the difference in our strength, Sasuke. You are weak. He held his hand and formed a black bowl of chakra. Rasengan. Konoha Council Rooms. Naruto entered in the council chambers. You wish to speak to me? He asked in a cold tone. This caught several people in the council off guard, especially Tsunade. This was not like the usual loud, hyperactive young ninja, who always wore a smile no matter what happened. What's wrong with you, Naruto? He's not himself, something must have happened. I'll have to ask when we're done here, thought Tsunade. Elder Council member Midokado Himura answered him. Yes, we summoned you here, he said. The council has finished reading the reports that were given to us by you and your teammates. The Suna team, as well as Rock Lee and your sensei, had a Kakashi's report. Although we're pleased that a mission of this level was successfully completed by a freshly ordained Chunin and a team of 4 genin, we have some concerns about the reports on the battle between you and your teammate Uchiha Sasuke. He continued, peering at Naruto over the rim of his glasses. So, the time has come. What concerns? Naruto asked. What is us concerned is the fact that you used a large amount of the Nine Tails chakra in your battle and caused much destruction to the Valley of the End this time, Elder Council member Uchiha Kaharu said. We have no choice. Uzumaki Naruto, we have to tell you. The council has decided that you shall be banished from Konoha immediately. The Warhawk Danzo said with a scowl as he said the word banished. He clearly wanted a harsher punishment for the young Jinchuriki. At this, Tsunade blew up. You can't do that, you old decrepit fools. The Uchiha tried to kill him. We have a report straight from Kakashi. Tsunade screamed. There is nothing left to discuss, Hokage-sama. The council has made its decision, and it is the last. Daze said with a smirk. Naruto looked at the council and said, you all are bunch idiots. You can't speak with us like that. Yuta, one civilian council member tried to say, but before he could complete the sentence, he killed by kunai in his heart. Everyone saw second Naruto was standing behind dead member with a bloody kunai in his hand and he disappeared with a flock of crows. This caught all people in the council off guard, especially 2 Sannin. Pathetic Konoha Council, Naruto said. They all saw his whole body surrounded in a thick black chakra. Its aura and oppressive weight were even more sinister than the Nine Tail. They were shocked when his look changed. He looks just like a younger Madara. All elders thought. I think it is time to give you my real introduction. I am Uchiha Naruto, the son of Uchiha Hitomi and true descendant of Uchiha Madara. Naruto said with a smirk. One foolish Anbu tried to attack him, but a Susanoo-O's hand caught him in midair. Foolish. He said as black fire appeared from Susanoo-O's hand, it wrapped around Anbu and turned him ash. Naruto looked toward the council. His eyes changed into eternal Manjikyu Sharingan form. He released a large amount of killing intent. If Konoha will be ever attacked, then don't hold any hope, I will come help you. With that he disappeared in swirling of the vortex. Shinra Tensei. Diva Path shouted and destroyed a big part of Konoha with his gravity jutsu. You are the 6 Paths of Pain, Akatsuki's leader. Naruto said as he appeared behind Diva Path. So, you have come to save your village, but it is too late now. Konoha is nothing but Diva Path tried to say. You're mistaken, I am not come to save them. Diva Path surprised at his statement. I am here to kill you. He said and his eyes turned purple with rings on them. Diva Path said in a shocked tone, Rinnegan. Naruto pointed his hand toward Diva Path and said calmly, Shinra Tensei. Naruto looked down at his fallen foe that was dying slowly from his wounds. It's over for you, Tobi. You have already lost the battle. Tobi was looking him with hate and anger. Jubi power will never be yours. Your plan rule on the world has already failed. He looked at Tobi with his eternal Manjikam Sharingan. I only pity you, Amaterasu. He said as black fire wrapped around Tobi and turned him ash. He disappeared and reappeared front of Jito Mizo. Naruto looked toward the statue. It was a giant humanoid entity. Its back had several spike-like protrusions. It was wearing some form of a robe. So, this is Jito Mizo. He said. His Sharingan eyes turned purple with ripple-like pattern in them, the Rinnegan. He gathered all his chakra and poured it all directly into his Rinnegan. He removed his black Anbu armor for exposing the seal on his stomach. He sat down on Jito Mizo and brought his hand on the seal. Release, he shouted as the seal on his stomach distorted. Naruto formed a hand seal. Urishishmfkenjutsu, he called as 4 symbols had formed around him. A spirit like 9 black dragons came out from his body and moved toward Jubi's stone prison, the moon. Chakra started to swirl around his body. Seal, he finished hand seals with dragon sign. He pulled all tail beast's chakra and Jubi's body into the seal. But the blast of black chakra, it was over. Yondaime Reikage stopped suddenly and snapped his gaze up towards the nearby river. His eyes widened at the levels of chakra he was sensing and quickly turned towards the rest of Alliance force. Everyone gets down. He shouted and the place engulfed in a massive black chakra dome. What is that? Lunoki shouted in surprise as it shredded everything it touched and tried to draw them in. I think that's Naruto. Gaara shouted back. A moment later the ball exploded in a massive blast of wind, knocking all of them down. After a moment of silence everyone managed to stand once more, albeit with effort. They looked at the surroundings. They all froze with the fear when they found Black Dragon in front of them. They saw he was looking at them with his strange red eyes. His red eyes looked like a perfect mixture between Sharingan and Rinnegan. They had 4 Rinnegan-like rings with 9 Sharingan-like Tomo in them. Suddenly a black portal opened in the sky, Dragon flew up there and disappeared in it. What was that? Godame Mizukage, Mei Terumi asked with slight fear in her voice. We don't know. Yondaime, Reikage said. He looked at the surroundings. I think 4th Shinobi War is finally over and we have won this war. He told everyone. What happened with all Biju? Sandaime Tsuchikage, Lunoki asked. And Naruto? Mei asked. Biju, they are gone forever, and Naruto Gaara looked at the sky. They saw the familiar black bird followed Dragon and entered the portal before portal would close. He is very much alive. Naruto's body was floating in endless darkness. Suddenly a lone figure approached to him and held up his unconscious body in the bridal style. You have completed your work here. It is time I take you to your second home, my great-grandson. The figure said to Naruto. Suddenly 2 familiar figures appeared beside him and they were Uchiha Madara and Uchiha Hitomi. Goodbye son, Hitomi kissed on Naruto's forehead. She looked at the figure. Please take care of him grandfather. She asked. I taught you everything I know. This is goodbye. Madara said to Naruto's unconscious body. We also want to give something to him. A voice said from the darkness. They quickly turned and saw 2 figures. First one was a beautiful woman with long raven black hair, rich pink eyes, and had creamy colored skin. She dressed in what looked like a white traditional kimono. Second figure was tall, at very least he was 10 feet tall. His body was a rotting sickly gray color with black rune, or perhaps seal-like markings over what was visible of his left hand and forearm, sharp obsidian black nails, onenju or Japanese prayer beads wrapped around his left hand wrist, his face resembled a Hanyu mask, a pair of horns flowing out of its long spiky white hair. The knife sheathed in its razor-sharp obsidian black fangs, a pair of demonic eyes glaring down at them, the sclera and pupil both a deep obsidian black, while the iris was a brilliant golden color, and a long white robe the only thing covering its body, yet left his chest and some of his navel in full view. Ami-sama, Shinigami-sama, Madara asked, what are you 2 doing here? We are here to meet the child of prophecy. Shinigami said. Ami walked next toward Naruto. She looked at Naruto's face and said, he is cute. She opened her hand and summoned a small white ball of light. She sent it toward Naruto. It absorbed in him and small purple-colored diamond mark appeared on his forehead. What is this? Hitomi asked as she pointed diamond mark in Naruto's forehead. My gift, he has darkness power, it is the light power from me. This will help him to balance his power. Kami answered and disappeared in a flash. Now my gift, Shinigami raised his hand on air. With flash, black katana appeared in his hand. Then it turned into a black ball of light. It absorbed in Naruto and kanji of dead appeared on his left shoulder. Use my gift wisely. He said and disappeared in black flash. Mysterious figure looked at Madara and Hitomi. This is time to go. He said. Both of them nodded and disappeared in darkness. He looked Naruto with a smile and disappeared in flash with him. Naruto slowly opened his eyes and looked around the place. He found himself in a small apartment. Where am I? He thought. Karasu-chan, where are you? He asked telepathically. I am here, Master Naruto. Karasu answered as she entered the room from the window. Where are we? Naruto asked. We are not an element nation, and I think we are in another dimension. Karasu said. He noticed a scroll addressed to him and asked, what is this? Dear Naruto. I am your great-grandfather. As for my name you will know very soon. I am still alive. Don't worry though, we will meet in time. When the time comes, I will be happy to see you. Also, in your journey, you will meet your other family. You notice you are not an element nation. You are in a different dimension. It is your second home. You are in a place called the United States, more specifically New York City, New York. There is another thing you noticed about yourself. If you haven't noticed, then look at yourself in a mirror. There are some changes in you because of Jubby. There is a seal at the bottom of the scroll. You will find all that you need in this world, and that includes money. Also, there is some important information about your gift. Oh, just for a reference for the future, get a book on Greek mythology, you will need that info, trust me. Be careful my great-grandson. One more thing, visit your inner world. You will get all answer of your question there. Your great-grandfather. Naruto looked at Karasu. Karasu-chan, is anything different about me? He asked. I thought you knew. Karasu answered. What do you mean? Look at yourself in a mirror. Naruto stood up and moved toward front of a mirror in the apartment. He notices short fangs in his mouth and slightly slitted pupils in his eyes. He saw a small purple-colored diamond mark on his forehead and kanji of dead in his left shoulder. He looked like his 10-year-old younger selves. What is this? Is some kind seal? Naruto thought and sent small chakra in left shoulder. With black flash, katana appeared in his left hand. He started to check katana. It was totally black, the sharp and given aura of the dead. More important things were kanji of Shinigami written on the main blade and black dragon with strange red eyes on the katana's handle. Interesting, Karasu said. And deadly, Naruto said, and katana disappeared with black flash. He took the letter and dropped some blood on a seal. With puff smoke many scrolls appeared. What really caught his attention was black bracelet. He took the bracelet and looked closely at it. It was in black color with golden design and some words written on it. All words were written in an unfamiliar language by gold. U1/2 AA grave acute C sedillum U superscript 1 A umlaut macron A grave umlaut plus or minus degrees plus or minus I A umlaut macron A grave umlaut plus or minus degrees I OEI grave 1/2 A tilde dot 1/4 plus or minus 1/2 A umlaut superscript 1 degrees I'm U macron 1/2 plus or minus superscript 1 dot superscript 1 A tilde A acute A grave macron plus or minus dot. Which language is it? He thought. Suddenly he saw words started to arrange in familiar language. There is nothing good, nothing bad, only important is balance. Okay, that is weird. Naruto thought. He took the bracelet and wore it on his left bicep. What now? Karasu asked. Naruto sat down for meditation and said, I am going to find my answer. He closed his eyes. Mindscape. It has really changed. Naruto said. Naruto saw his mindscape. It was nothing looks like a sewer. It was a deep forest with a strange moon. The moon was a blood red and had 4 concentric circles and 9 tomo in it. He looked around and found Black Dragon who had looked at him with his red eyes. His entire upper body covered in black scales which decorated by spiraling, blue markings. Its lower body, specifically its belly, inner tail and legs were gray in color. It has possessed a blunt rounded head with 4 large and elongated plates, which extended backwards. Its mouth was full of sharp teeth, and below it was an elongated protrusion pointing downwards. It was gargantuan multi-layered wings composed of the very same plates covering its whole body. Its massive tail was split in 2 at its end, where the black plates disappeared and took on a double stinger-like appearance. His eyes looked like mixture between Sharingan and Rinnegan. They had 4 Rinnegan-like concentric circles with 9 Sharingan-like tomo in the 3 circles, closer to the pupil color was red. Naruto's eyes turned into an eternal Mangekyo Sharingan form. Who are you? He asked. Dragon heard this and answered his question. I am the manifestation of power which has existed in your body. I am the result of your Jubi demonic power. Jubi was the harbinger of death and chaos. I am the deity of balance. What now? I am you. We are not different. You know what to do. Yes, I know, Naruto said and touched dragon scale. The dragon turned in a million shards of black energy. All energy entered his body. Real worlds. Naruto opened his exactly looked like the dragon's eyes. Jubi's eye. Yancy Academy. Hello, may I have your attention please before we begin today? I would like to introduce a new student that would be joining us, please greet him. Warmly a woman spoke to her class, as they all quieted down when she began speaking. None of them wanted to get detention or be assigned extra homework over the weekend. Seeing that all her students were giving her their undivided attention, she turned toward the door at the front of the room. You may come in now. With that 13-year-old teen entered the room walking toward the teacher's desk before facing all his new fellow classmates. He was tall at least 5'4". He had pale skin with spicy midnight black hair and dark eyes. He wore a pair of black shoes, black jeans, white shirt and a black coat with hood. Hello everyone, my name is Naruto Uchiha. Chapter 2. Start a new adventure. It has been 3.5 years since Naruto arrived in this new land. Learning a new language had been surprisingly easy to him with his Sharingan. For him this world was more peaceful and advanced than Element Nation. This peace was boring, but it wasn't mean. He was going to slack off because of peace. He had trained every day to improve his skills. This was not all bad for him. He had met 2 interesting people in school. First was Percy Jackson. He was 12 and had black hair and sea green eyes. He had an odd energy signature. Percy hated school. His reason was that weird shit happened to him and that made a lot of people dislike him. 2 of them get along very well. Then there was Grover Underwood. Through Percy, Naruto had met that boy. Grover had Caucasian skin color with short curly brown hair and brown eyes. The boy was a cripple because he was always seen with crutches. He was also a bit of a hippie, he thought, because of the fact that he barely ever ate meat and by the way he dressed. Though all in all, Grover was a very nice guy. Naruto heightened sense, Grover smelled like a goat, while Percy strangely smelled like the ocean. Now, they were on a bus to the Metropolitan Museum of Art. They were taking a trip to learn about Greek mythology. Percy was wearing for today an orange shirt, blue jeans, and some black shoes. Grover, who was sitting right next to Percy, had his usual crutches, a yellow shirt and some oversized pants that hid his shoes. As for Naruto, he was wearing a pair of black shoes, black jeans, white shirt, and a black coat with a hood. Naruto looked at the scene that was happening in front of him. One of his classmates, Nancy Bobofit, the freckle-red-headed kleptomaniac girl, hitting Grover in the back of the head with chunks of peanut butter and ketchup sandwich, who was acting like nothing was happening to him. "I'm going to kill her," Percy mumbled. Grover tried to calm him down. "It's okay. I like peanut butter." He dodged another piece of Nancy's lunch. "That's it," Percy started to get up, but Grover pulled him back to his seat. "You're already on probation," Grover said. "You know who'll get blamed if anything happens." "Miss Bobofit," Naruto said, who thought it was right time to interface. "Will you stop that? Why you care? You are not like those two losers, so why do you bother to help them?" Nancy asked. "Because they are better people than you are," Naruto said in a cold tone that sent chills down the girl's spine. "Now stop or I will stop you." She paled and quickly nodded her head. Mr. Brunner led the museum tour. He was Latin teacher and was leading this trip. He was a middle-aged guy in a motorized wheelchair. He had thinning hair and a scruffy beard and a frayed tweed jacket, which always smelled like coffee. He rode up front in his wheelchair, guiding class through the big etchy galleries, past marble statues and glass cases full of really old black and orange pottery. The class made their way into the museum as they walked past the giant pillars at the front of the museum, and Naruto couldn't help but notice how much Mr. Brunner and surprisingly Grover's face lit up when they saw all the Greek and Roman artifacts. Naruto looked at Percy, who was looking at some old stuff that was in good condition. "Interesting, isn't it?" Naruto asked to Percy. Percy turned back and saw Naruto. Yes," he answered. "This stuff is really old, but it is important." Percy looked at Naruto oddly before shaking his head and said, "I always forget that you like this stuff, I mean Greek mythology." "Whatever," Naruto shrugged as they walked with the group to where Mr. Brunner had stopped. "Besides, Mr. Brunner is under the assumption that we should both understand it all." Percy just rolled his eyes. They turned their attention to Mr. Brunner. They went quiet, listened to the guy tell them about the ancient gods and other stuff like that. He gathered all the students around a 13-foot-tall stone column with a big sphinx at the top and started telling everyone how it was a grave marker, a stele, for a girl about their age. Mr. Brunner began to explain what the carvings on the sides meant and actually managed to catch Percy's attention because it was actually kind of interesting, but yet everyone else around him was talking and having their own conversations. Naruto looked at the other teacher chaperone, Miss Dodds, was giving Percy the evil eye. She was this little math teacher from Georgia who always wore a black leather jacket even though she was 50 years old. She had come to Yancey halfway through the year. From her first day, Miss Dodds loved Nancy Bobofit. Her energy was odd. "It is better I keep an eye on her," Naruto thought. Mr. Brunner kept talking about Greek funeral art. Finally, Nancy Bobofit snickered something about the naked guy on the stele and Percy yelled at her, "Will you shut up?" This was louder than usual. The whole group laughed at this. Mr. Brunner stopped his story. "Mr. Jackson," he said, "did you have a comment?" "No sir," Percy replied, embarrassed by his outburst. Mr. Brunner pointed to one of the pictures on the stele. "Perhaps you'll tell us what this picture represents?" he asked to Percy. Percy looked at the picture and said, "That's Kronos eating his kids, right?" "Yes," Mr. Brunner said, obviously not satisfied. "And he did this because..." "Well," Percy said, "Kronos was the king god, and..." "God?" Mr. Brunner asked. "Titan," Percy corrected himself. "And..." Naruto saw Percy have a hard time answering that question. So he decided to intervene. He ate his kid because there was some prophecy telling him that his kids were going to take over one day like he did. So he ate his kids. Naruto explained, getting a sigh of relief from Percy. But his wife hid baby Zeus and gave Rondos a rock to eat instead. Then when Zeus grew up, he tricked his dad, Rondos, into barfing up his brothers and sisters. "Ew," all the girls behind them said. Then there was a big fight and the gods won. Naruto continued and finished the answer, getting a nod of approval from Mr. Brunner. Behind the two, everyone heard a Nancy Bobofit mumble, "Like we're going to use this in real life. Like it's going to say on our job applications, please explain why Kronos ate his kids." "And why, Mr. Jackson, Mr. Uchiha," Mr. Brunner said, "do you have any answer for Miss Bobofit's excellent question? Does this matter in real life?" "Busted," Grover muttered. "Shut up." Nancy barked at Grover, her face going redder than her hair. "I don't know," Percy shrugged, a little relieved that Nancy picked as well. Maybe if we somehow met them, it is necessary for us to know them, Naruto said with a smirk, which made a lot of people laugh. He saw shocked faces of Mr. Brunner and surprisingly Grover. Do they know something I don't? I bet those two know something which related to Greek gods, Naruto thought and narrowed his at them. I see, Mr. Brunner said, well, half credit to you both. Zeus did feed Kronos a mixture of mustard and wine, which made him disgorge his other 5 children, who of course, being immortal gods, had lived and growing up completely undigested in the Titan's stomach. The gods defeated their father, sliced him to pieces with his own scythe, and scattered his remains in Tartarus, the darkest part of the underworld. On that happy note, it's time for lunch. Miss Dodds, would you lead us back outside? The class drifted off, the girls holding their stomachs, the guys pushing each other around and acting like doofuses. Grover, Percy and Naruto were about to follow when Mr. Brunner said, Mr. Jackson, Mr. Uchiha. They told Grover to keep one going while they handled whatever he was going to say to them. Sir? Mr. Brunner had this look, like he knew a lot more than he let on, and that had seen too much. You two must learn the answer to my question. About the Titans? Percy asked. About real life. And how your studies apply to it. Oh, Percy mumbled. What you boys learn from me, he started, is vitally important. I expect you to treat it as such. I will only accept the best from both of you, Percy Jackson, Naruto Uchiha. Naruto had sensed Percy's anger on the Mr. Brunner, so decided to answer his question. It is great, he said. Percy mumbled something about trying and they left to go eat. Percy goes ahead, I will meet you later, Naruto said. Where are you going? Percy asked. Some personal work, Naruto said. Percy nodded and walked away. Naruto saw no one was there and he disappeared into a swirling vortex. Percy joined Grover and they sat on the edge of a fountain. It was away from the others so they would not be bothered, and Percy didn't like being part of the school in the first place. You get detention again? Grover asked looking at Percy. Nah, he said. Not from Brunner. I just wish he'd laid off me sometimes. I mean, I'm not a genius like Naruto. This thing they don't know their friend, he got best grade in the entire subject. He was good at all sports. Then what was he doing in lower class? So, where is he? Grover asked. He is doing his personal work, Percy answered. What kinds of personal work? I didn't ask him. Okay, Grover said shrugging. Can I have your apple? Percy nodded and gave him an apple. They began to chat quietly about the trip and what they might be doing over the summer when Nancy Bobofit walked up to them with some of her goons behind and decided to dump her lunch onto Grover. Oops. She said grinning with bits of cat stuck in her crooked teeth. Percy was angry and jumped and looked like he was about to hit her before Grover quickly grabbed and sat him back down. Don't. You will just get yourself into more trouble like you always do, Grover said. Percy, who did not look very convinced, sat back down, but his eyes didn't look away from Nancy Bobofit. Then something weird happened. The water from the fountain rose up and pushed her onto her butt. She fell into the water fountain making a loud and audible splash, which caught the attention of everyone including the teachers, with Miss Dodds making her way over. Miss Dodds, Percy just pushed me. She yelled. Percy heard some of the kids were whispering. Did you see? The water. Like it grabbed her. What they were talking about. All I knew was that I was in trouble again. When Miss Dodds was sure poor little Nancy was okay, promising to get her a new shirt at the museum gift shop, etc., Percy thought. Miss Dodds turned on him and said, now, honey. I know, he said, a month erasing workbooks. Come with me, Miss Dodds said. Wait. Grover yelped. It was me. I pushed her. Percy stunned that Grover was trying to cover for him. However, Miss Dodds was not buying it and she leads Percy away back inside the museum where Percy was most likely going to get another scolding and another detention. They were back in the Greek and Roman section. Except for them, the gallery was empty. Miss Dodds stood with her arms crossed in front of a big marble frieze of the Greek gods. She was making this weird noise in her throat, like growling. You've given us problems, honey, she said to Percy. He looked at her and said, yes ma'am. She tugged on the cuffs of her leather jacket. Did you really think you would get away with it? The look in her eyes was beyond mad. It was evil. She's a teacher, he thought nervously. It's not like she's going to hurt me. I'll try harder, ma'am. Suddenly, thunder shook the building. We are not fools, Percy Jackson, she said. It was only a matter of time before we found you out. Confess, and you will suffer less pain. This made Percy look her odd. Well, ma'am, I don't. Your time is up, she said and hissed ominously. Then the weirdness came. Her eyes began to glow like barbecue coals. Her fingers stretched, turning into talons. Her jacket melted into large, leathery wings. She wasn't human. She was a shriveled hag with bat wings and claws and a mouth full of yellow fangs. She was not human, that was for sure. Miss Dodds? Whoa. Percy saw his teacher turn monster. "Where is it?" she asked and tried to attack on him, but somehow he dodged her. He tried to run away from her. "I won't ask again. Where is it? What the hell is she talking about?" Percy thought to himself. He brought out of his thoughts when he heard the screeching of wheels get closer to him. He looked over. He was surprised to see Mr. Brunner there in his wheelchair. "What ho, Percy?" Mr. Brunner shouted and threw an item to him. Percy looked down to see what he caught and saw that he had a gold ballpoint pen in his hand. "What the hell am I supposed to do with a pen?" he shouted. Percy did not know what to do. So he decided to twist the cap of the pen. Then pen suddenly became a bronze sword. "Whoa," he said. Percy attacked shakily toward Miss Dudes. He simply swung the blade diagonally, hoping to wound her, but she dodged his attack and before he could react, she hit him in his chest. This sent him toward the wall. "Die, honey," Miss Dudes yelled as she spread out her wings and began to flap over towards him. Absolute terror ran through Percy's body. He closed his eyes, but when he felt no pain, he opened his eyes. Huh? He saw a black blade was sticking out of the Miss Dodd's chest and its handle was held by Naruto. Naruto yanked out katana of Miss Dodd's chest and she exploded into yellow powder, vaporized on the spot, leaving nothing but the smell of sulfur. "Are you alright?" Naruto asked. His sword disappeared in black flash. Yes, when Percy tried to stand up on his feet, sharp pain emerged from his chest. "I think she broke my rib." "This will help you," Naruto said as he put his hand on Percy's chest. His hand started glowing in green and Percy found that his pain was becoming less. "How?" "I will explain you later," Naruto said as he saw Percy's sword. "By the way, this is a nice weapon. Now I know why people said that the pen is mightier than the sword." Percy looked back to his weapon and found his sword turned back in gold ballpoint pen. "Where did you get this pen?" Naruto asked. "From Mr. Brunner," Percy answered. "So, Mr. Brunner gave this pen to Percy. Let's go, Percy." "I don't want to explain anyone about this mess," Naruto said. Back outside, it had started to rain. Grover was sitting by the fountain, a museum map tented over his head. Nancy Bobofit was still standing there, soaked from her swim in the fountain, grumbling to her ugly friends. "When she saw me, she said, 'I hope Miss Kerr whipped your butt.'" "Who?" Percy asked in confusion. "Our teacher, duh. We have no teacher whose name is Miss Kerr." Percy thought. He wanted to ask Nancy what she was talking about. She just rolled her eyes and turned away. He walked over to Grover and he gave him the same answer, but he was stuttering slightly, so Percy knew he was lying. Thunder boomed overhead. Percy saw Mr. Brunner sat under his red umbrella, reading his book, as if he'd never moved. He looked up, a little distracted. "Ah, that would be my pen. Please bring your own writing utensil in the future, Mr. Jackson," he said. Percy handed his pen. "Sir," he said, "where's Miss Dodds?" Mr. Brunner stared at him blankly. "Who?" "The other chaperone, Miss Dodds. The pre-algebra teacher." "Percy, there is no Miss Dodds on this trip. As far as I know, there has never been a Miss Dodds at Yancey Academy. Are you feeling alright?" "What?" "You may have just got the Miss Kerr's name mixed up with someone else, perhaps an old teacher from a previous school," Mr. Brunner said before wheeling off. Percy just sighed. "Let's go, Naruto," he sighed and turned back. He saw Naruto was not there. "Now, where is he? I thought he was behind me. Had I imagined the whole thing? Percy though." Naruto was standing on top of the museum and had a raven on his left shoulder. "What do you think, Karasu-chan?" Naruto asked. "Someone has erased their memories," Karasu said. "Only me, you, Percy, Grover and Mr. Brunner remembers her." "Percy saw you using your power. Why you haven't erased his memory?" "Because I have felt that something big is going to happen and Percy will be a big part of this." Both of them looked at Percy. "This world is not boring, as I thought. I think this is the start of our new adventure," he said and both of them vanished in swirling vortex. After that incident everything was normal in school, but for Percy it was not. For the rest of the year he was a bit put off by the revelation that Miss Dodds never existed. In her place was a perky blonde woman's name Mrs. Kerr. Every so often Percy would spring a Miss Dodds reference on someone just to see if he could trip them up, but they would stare at him like he was psycho. He had almost believed them, but Grover couldn't fool him. When he mentioned the name Dodds to him, he would always hesitate before denying it. But Percy knew he was lying. Naruto hadn't cared about all these things. Because this wasn't the first time something weird had happened with him. But he knows something was going on. Because a few days later, the biggest tornado ever spotted in the Hudson Valley touched down only 50 miles from Yancey Academy. One of the current events was the unusual number of small planes that had gone down in sudden squalls in the Atlantic this year. His next problem was Percy. Naruto explained Percy about his power. He told him about different dimension, ninja, chakra, etc. He told Percy truth half-truth. At the first time Percy hadn't believed in him. But once Naruto used shadow clone jutsu and made many copies of him, Percy believed in him. Percy started feeling cranky and irritable most of the time. His grades slipped from D to F. He got into more fights with Nancy Bobofit and her friends. He sent out into the hallway in almost every class. Though Percy got in trouble when his English teacher, Mr. Nickel, asked him for the millionth time why he was too lazy to study for spelling tests, he snapped. He called him an old sot, whatever that meant. Headmaster sent a letter his mom telling her that Percy would not be allowed back next year. Naruto could tell Percy missed his mom because he hated that fact that she was with Gabe of all people. The kid was homesick, no surprise there. Right now the two were in their dorm room trying their best to study for the upcoming exam. Throughout the night, Naruto could see that Percy was getting more and more agitated. "This is impossible," Percy said as he threw his book across the room. "I can't understand it." Naruto said, "Keep trying, Percy. You'll get it, evenly." "Thanks for the support, Naruto," Percy said and picked up the book. "What is problematic, Percy? What is the difference between Chiron and Charon?" "Simple, one has an I and the other has an A in their name. You know what I mean. Why don't you ask Mr. Brunner for help? I'm sure he will help you." "Yeah, okay, thanks," Percy said, getting up from the desk, and Naruto was following him. They walked downstairs to the faculty offices. Most of them were dark and empty, but Mr. Brunner's door was ajar, light from his window stretching across the hallway floor. They were 3 steps from the door handle when they heard voices inside the office. Mr. Brunner asked a question. A voice that was definitely Grover's said, "Worried about Percy and Naruto, sir." They leaned slightly to hear their conversation. "Alone this summer," Grover was saying. "I mean, a kindly one in the school. Now that we know, and they know too. We would only make matters worse by rushing him," Mr. Brunner said. "We need Percy to mature more, and Naruto, there is something different about him. So he is suspicious of me," Naruto thought. "We have to be resolved without them, Grover. Let Percy enjoy his ignorance while he still can, but I am not sure about Naruto." "But Percy." "His imagination," Mr. Brunner insisted. "The mist over the students and staff will be enough to convince him of that." "Mist, is it some kind illusion?" Naruto thought. "Sir, I can't fail in my duties again." Grover's voice choked with emotion. "You know what that would mean." "You haven't failed, Grover," Mr. Brunner said kindly. "I should have seen her for what she was. Now let's just worry about keeping them alive until next fall." Suddenly, the mythology book dropped out of Percy's hand and hit the floor with a thud. His eyes widened in panic as all went silent. "Idiot," Naruto thought before he quickly grabbed Percy's arms and book. He led both of them away from the room. Mr. Brunner came out of the office and saw nothing. "Nothing," he murmured. "My nerves haven't been right since the winter solstice." "Mine neither," Grover said. "But I could have sworn." "Go back to the dorm," Mr. Brunner said. "You've got a long day of exams tomorrow." Govern said, "Don't remind me." Mr. Brunner went back to the office and closed the door. "I thought it was Percy," he murmured. Suddenly, office light went off. What happened with light? Mr. Brunner thought. "Interesting," a voice said from the dark. Mr. Brunner turned his head in the voice's direction. "Who is there?" he asked. Then a dark figure came out of the darkness in front of him. Mr. Brunner shook his head in disbelief and said, "Naruto." He saw Naruto, whose normally dark blue eyes were red with 3 black tomos spinning inside them. "Hello, Mr. Brunner, care to tell me what's going on here?" Naruto asked calmly. Naruto suddenly appeared front of him. "And don't try to lie to me," he said. Mr. Brunner sighed. He took a card from pocket and gave it to Naruto. Naruto took a card from his hand. He saw it was written in the Greek, and thankfully he knew Greek. Half-Blood Camp. Half-Blood Hill. Long Island, New York. 800-009-0009. It was some kind address of the summer camp. "What is this?" "A summer camp?" Naruto asked. Mr. Brunner said, "This is the place where you'll get your all questions answers. It better be true. Oh, one more thing, illusion doesn't work on me, and you are not what you look like," he said with a smirk. "Bye, Mr. C." Mr. Brunner froze. What? How?" he asked, but he only saw Naruto disappeared with a flock of crow. So he is from that world, Mr. Brunner thought. Grover walked in to see Percy and Naruto reading their textbooks, with Percy sitting at a desk while Naruto was lying on the bed, studying his exam notes. "Hey," Grover said, bleary-eyed. "Are you ready for the test?" "I'm ready," Naruto said with looking at him. Percy didn't answer. "You look awful," Grover said to Percy. "Is everything okay?" "Just tired," Percy said, and turned so Grover couldn't read his expression and started getting ready for bed. The next afternoon, both Percy and Naruto were leaving the 3-hour Latin exam. "That was not bad," Naruto said. Only for you, Naruto, for me it was worst. Ugh, my eyes are swimming with all the Greek and Roman names that I misspelled. Percy complained as he held his head. Unfortunately, Mr. Brunner called him back inside. For a moment, Percy was worried he'd found out about his and Naruto's eavesdropping the night before, but that didn't seem to be the problem. "Percy," Mr. Brunner said in a kind tone. "Don't be discouraged about leaving Yancey. It's for the best." Is he encouraging him or trying to break his spirit? Naruto thought. Percy mumbled, "Okay, sir." I mean, Mr. Brunner wheeled his chair back and forth like he wasn't sure what to say. "This isn't the right place for you. It was only a matter of time." "Right," Percy said with a slightly angry voice. No, Mr. Brunner said. "Oh, confound it all. What I'm trying to say, you're not normal, Percy. That's nothing to be." "Thanks," Percy blurted. "Thanks a lot, sir, for reminding me." "Percy," Mr. Brunner called out, but Percy was already out the door. "Take my advice, Mr. Brunner. Always think before you speak," Naruto said as he walked out of the room. On the last day of the term, Percy shoved his clothes into his suitcase. He was listening to the other guys. They were talking about their vacation plans. One of them was going on a hiking trip to Switzerland. Another was cruising the Caribbean for a month. One of them asked him what he was doing this summer. "I am going back to the city," Percy said. "Oh," one of the guys said. "That's cool." They went back to their conversation as if he was never existed. "Percy, I thought I was coming with you," Naruto said, scaring Percy since he did know he was behind him. "When did you get here?" Percy asked. "Just a few minutes ago," Naruto answered. "Oh," Percy said. "Sorry, I forgot you were coming with me." "No problem, Percy," Naruto said, "let's go." Percy was dreading how he was going to say goodbye to Grover, but as it turned out, he didn't have to. Grover did book a ticket to Manhattan on the same Greyhound as they had, so they were, together again, heading into the city. During the bus ride, Grover kept glancing nervously down the aisle, watching the other passengers. It occurred to Percy that he'd always acted nervous and fidgety when they left Yancey, as if he expected something bad to happen. Though Percy was getting annoyed by it and he blurted out, looking for kindly ones. Grover nearly jumped out of his seat. "Why, what do you mean?" A boy confessed about eavesdropping on his and Mr. Brunner's conversation the night before the exams. Grover's eye twitched. "How much did both of you hear?" "Oh, not much." "What's the summer solstice deadline?" Naruto asked. Grover winced. "Look, Percy." Naruto, "I was just worried for you, Percy, see? I mean, you are hallucinating about demon math teachers." Percy said, "Grover. And I was telling Mr. Brunner that maybe you were overstressed or something, because there was no such person as Mrs. Dodds, and—" "Grover, you're a really, really bad liar," Naruto said. Grover's ears turned pink. From his shirt pocket, he fished out a grubby business card. "Just take this, okay? In case you need me this summer." Both boys looked at the card. The card was in fancy script, which murdered in Percy's dyslexic eyes, but he finally made out something like Grover Underwood. Keeper. Half-Blood Hill. Long Island, New York. 800-009-0009. "This is same address Mr. Brunner gave me," Naruto thought. "What's half?" Percy started. "Don't say it aloud," Grover yelped. "That's mine, summer address." Percy shocked. Even Grover had a summer home. I'd never considered that his family might be as rich as the others at Yancey, he thought. "Okay," Percy said glumly. "So, like, if I want to come visit your mansion." Grover nodded. Or if you need me." "Why would I need you?" Percy growled out harshly, surprising even Naruto. Grover blushed. "Look, Percy, the truth is, I kind of have to protect both of you." Both boys looked at him oddly. I mean, they were the one who had to protect him in the school. "Grover," Percy said, "what exactly are you protecting me from?" There was a huge grinding noise under our feet. Black smoke poured from the dashboard and the bus filled with a smell like rotten eggs. The driver cursed and limped the Greyhound over to the side of the highway. After a few minutes clanking around in the engine compartment, the driver announced, "Everyone out." Trio filed outside with everybody else. They were on a stretch of country road. On the highway was nothing but maple trees and litter from passing cars. "Hey, what was that?" Percy said, getting Naruto's attention. Percy pointed over to the side of the road and Naruto saw what looked like an old fruit stand. The stuff on sale looked really good. Heaping boxes of blood-red cherries and apples, walnuts and apricots, jugs of cider and a clawfoot tub full of ice. There were no customers, just 3 old women sitting in rocking chairs in the shade of a maple tree, knitting the biggest pair of socks. The woman on the right knitted one of them. The woman on the left knitted the other. The woman in the middle held an enormous basket of electric blue yarn. All 3 women looked ancient, with pale faces wrinkled like fruit leather, silver hair tied back in white bandana, bony arms sticking out of bleached cotton dresses. The weirdest thing was they seemed to be looking right at Percy. Why they are looking at Percy? Naruto thought. He saw Gover's nose was twitching. Grover. Percy said. Hey, man. Gover asked Percy, tell me they're not looking at you. They are, aren't they? Yeah, weird, huh? You think those socks would fit me? Not funny, Percy. Not funny at all. The old woman in the middle took out a huge pair of scissors, gold and silver, long-bladed, like shears. Grover catches his breath. We're getting on the bus, he told them. Come on. What? Percy said. It's 1,000 degrees in there. Let's go, Percy, Naruto said. Percy surprised at that. What? He asked. Naruto said, only this time do it just like he said. Because after that he will have to give us some explanation. Then he narrowed his eyes as he looked at Gover. Am I right? Gover saw his cold eyes, he paled and nodded immediately. Gover opened the door and climbed inside, but Percy and Naruto stayed back for a bit. Across the road, the old women were still watching Percy. The middle one cut the yarn, which they could hear that snip across 4 lanes of traffic. Her 2 friends balled up the electric blue socks, leaving Percy wondering who they could be for Sasquatch or Godzilla. Naruto rolled his eyes and climbed in the bus. At the rear of the bus, the driver wrenched a big chunk of smoking metal out of the engine compartment. The bus shuddered and the engine roared back to life. The passengers cheered. Darn right, yelled the driver. He slapped the bus with his hat. Everybody back on board. Once they got going, Percy started feeling feverish, as if he did catch the flu. Grover didn't look much better. He was shivering and his teeth were chattering. And Naruto, he was normal. Percy asked Grover. Yeah? Tell us. Grover dabbed his forehead with his shirt sleeve. Percy and Naruto, what did you see back on the fruit stand? You mean the old women? What is it about them, man? They're not like Mrs. Dodds, are they? Percy asked. Grover's expression was hard to read, but they got the feeling that the fruit stand women were something much, much worse than Mrs. Dodds. Grover said, just tell me what you saw. Naruto said, the middle one took out her scissors and she cut the yarn. Grover closed his eyes and made a gesture with his fingers and said, you two saw her snip the cord. Yeah. So? Percy said. This is not happening, Grover mumbled. He started chewing at his thumb. I didn't want this to be like the last time. What last time? Naruto asked. Always 6th grade. They never get past 6th. Grover, Percy said, because Grover was really starting to scare him. What are you talking about? Let me walk with both of you. Promise me, Grover said. Is this like a superstition or something? Percy asked. No, answered Grover. That snipping of the yarn. Does that mean somebody is going to die? He asked. Interesting, Naruto thought and looked away from Grover, who looked like he was already picking the kind of flowers to their grave. This is becoming more and more interesting. The rest of the journey back was silent, but they ditched Grover as soon as they got to the bus terminal, because the rest of bus ride they listened to Grover. He was freaking out Percy and was looking both of them like they was a dead man, while muttering, why does this always happen? And why does it always have to be 6th grade? Whenever he got upset, Grover's bladder acted up, so they weren't surprised when, as soon as they got off the bus, Grover went to the bathroom at the bus station. Instead of waiting him, Percy got his suitcase, slipped outside with Naruto, and caught the first taxi uptown. The East 104th and 1st, Percy told the driver. You know Grover will not like this, Naruto said. I know, but we have to go. I have to get home and see my mom and Grover is freaking me out, Percy said. Whatever, Naruto said as they traveled to Percy's mom's apartment. Along the way, Percy told Naruto all about his mom. Her name is Sally Jackson and she's the best person in the world. That also proves my theory that the best people have the rottenest luck, he said, and Naruto nodded, having heard that from him a few weeks ago. With Grover. Grover got out of the bathroom and looked around for Percy and Naruto. He only saw Naruto with his arms crossed. Naruto, where is Percy? He went home, Naruto replied, making Grover's eyes widen. What? Grover freaked. Grover, Mr. Brunner was right. I am not normal, Naruto said. You don't have to protect me, because I am perfectly capable to protect myself. With that he disappeared in a flock of crow. Grover had a look of pure shock on his face. Percy's mom apartment. Naruto and Percy walked Percy's mom's little apartment. Percy was hoping his mom would be home from work. Instead, Smelly Gabe was in the living room, playing poker with his buddies. The television blared ESPN. Chips and beer cans were strewn all over the carpet. Hardly looking up, Gabe said around his cigar, so, you are home and who is your loser friend? Naruto, Percy said. Where's my mom? Working, Gabe said. You got any cash? That made Percy rolled his eyes. No, welcome back. Good to see you. How has your life been the last 6 months? He thought. Percy noticed that Gabe had put on weight. He looked like a tuskless walrus in thrift store clothes. He had about 3 hairs on his head, all combed over his bald scalp, as if that made him handsome or something. This guy managed the electronics mega mart in Queens, but he stayed home most of the time. It was a wonder why he hadn't been fired long before. He just kept on collecting paychecks, spending the money on cigars that made Percy nauseous, and on beer, of course. Always beer. Whenever Percy was home, he expected him to give his gambling funds. He called it their guy secret. Meaning, if he told his mom, he would punch his lights out. "I don't have any cash," Percy told him. Babe raised a greasy eyebrow. "You took a taxi from the bus station," he said. "Probably paid with a 20, got 6, $7 in change. The somebody expects to live under this roof, he ought to carry his own weight. Am I right, Eddie?" Eddie, the super of the apartment building, looked at Percy with a twinge of sympathy. "Come on, Gabe," he said. "The kid just got here." "Am I right?" Gabe repeated. Eddie scowled into his bowl of pretzels. The other 2 guys passed gas in harmony. "Fine," Percy said. He dug a wad of dollars out of his pocket and threw the money on the table. "I hope you lose." The report card came, "Brain boy." Gabe shouted after me. "I wouldn't act so snooty." Naruto saw the scene. He looked at Gabe and said calmly, "Give Percy back his money." Then just like a puppet, Gabe had obeyed his order. He gave Percy back his money. "Now sleep," he said to Gabe and Eddie. He put both of them to sleep. Percy looked at the money, which Gabe had given back him. "How did you do that?" he asked Naruto in surprised tone. "Hypnosis and illusion," Naruto said. "I wish I could do that," Percy said. They left the room and went Percy's room, which really wasn't his room. During school months, it was Gabe's study. He didn't study anything in there except old car magazines, but he loved shoving Percy's stuff in the closet, leaving his muddy boots on my windowsill, and doing his best to make the place smell like his nasty cologne and cigars and stale beer. Percy dropped his suitcase on the bed. Home sweet home. Percy thought about Gabe's smell, which was almost worse than the nightmares about Mrs. Dodds, or the sound of that old fruit lady's shears snipping the yarn. But as soon as he thought that, his legs felt weak. He remembered Grover's look of panic, how he'd made me promise they wouldn't go home without him. A sudden chill rolled through him. Naruto saw fear on Percy's face and asked, "Are you okay, Percy?" Before Percy could answer, he heard his mom, Sally's voice. "Percy?" She opened the bedroom door, and his fears melted. Percy looked at his mother, her eyes sparkle and change color in the light. Her smile is as warm as a quilt. She's got a few gray streaks mixed in with her long brown hair. "Oh, Percy," she hugged him tight. "I can't believe it. You've grown since Christmas." "Thanks, Mom," Percy said. Her red, white and blue Sweet on America uniform smelled like the best things in the world. Chocolate, licorice, and all the other stuff she sold at the candy shop in Grand Central. She'd brought him a huge bag of free samples, the way she always did when he came home. Sally saw Naruto and asked, "So who is your friend?" "Oh, that is Naruto Uchiha. He is a good friend from school," Percy replied. "Good to know you have a friend," Sally Jackson said. "Did you know what happened with Gabe and his friend and why they are sleeping like this?" "I don't know," Percy lied. Sally nodded and hugged him again. Percy then began to tell her all about his school year at Yancey Academy. It seriously was not as bad as the headmaster said it was. He didn't really tell her much about the museum because it still freaked him out. "Did something scare you?" "No, Mom," Percy said. He wanted to tell her about Mrs. Dodds and the 3 old ladies with a yarn, but he thought it would sound stupid. Sally pursed her lips. She knew Percy was hiding something, but she didn't push him. "I have a surprise for you," she said. "We're going to the beach." Percy's eyes widened. "Montauk. Pre-night same cabin." "When?" Sally smiled. "As soon as I get changed." She looked at Naruto. "You can also come with us, Naruto." "Sorry, I couldn't come with you," Naruto said. "Why?" Percy asked. Naruto said, "I have to go somewhere, Percy. I only came here to meet your mother, maybe next time." "No problem, Naruto," Sally said. "Goodbye, Percy and Mrs. Jackson," Naruto said. "Goodbye, Naruto," Percy said. He was a bit sad because Naruto wasn't coming with him. Naruto left the room and walked out to the Percy's home. He looked around and when he saw there was no one, he disappeared in the swirling of the vortex. Narrator's apartment. Naruto appeared in his apartment. "Harasu-chan," Naruto said. He called his raven. Harasu came out from the shadow and landed on his left shoulder. "Yes, master," she said. "Tomorrow we are going to somewhere." "Where?" "The summer camp." "With Percy." Abe kept griping and groaning about losing Sally's cooking and most important, his 78 Kamer for the whole weekend. "Not a scratch on this car, brain boy," he warned Percy. "Not one little scratch. It's not me who'll drive the car. I am only 12, Percy thought. But that didn't matter to Gabe. If a seagull so much as popped on his paint job, he'd find a way to blame him. Watching him lumber back toward the apartment building, Percy got so mad he did something. As Gabe reached the doorway, he made the hand gesture like Grover make on the bus, a sort of warding off evil gesture, a clawed hand over his heart, then a shoving movement toward Gabe. The screen door slammed shut so hard it whacked Gabe in the butt and sent him flying up the staircase, as if he'd been shot from a cannon. Percy didn't stay long enough to find out what happened. He got in the Camaro and told his mom to step on it. "I'm Skip." Right now the car was pulling in next to a wooden cabin that located right on the beach. It was a little pastel box with faded curtains, half sunken into the dunes. There was sand in the sheets and spiders in the cabinets, and the sea was too cold to swim in. "I love the place," Percy thought. They got there, opened all the cabin's windows, and went through their usual cleaning routine. "We walked on the beach, fed blue corn chips to the seagulls, and munched on blue jelly beans, blue saltwater taffy, and all the other free samples Sally had brought from work. When it got dark, they made a fire. They roasted hot dogs and marshmallows." Sally told Percy stories about when she was a kid, back before her parents died in the plane crash. She told him about the books she wanted to write someday when she had enough money to quit the candy shop. "Mom, what was my father like?" Percy asked with some courage. "He was kind, Percy," Sally said. "Tall, handsome, and powerful. But gentle, too. You have his black hair, you know, and his green eyes." She fished a blue jelly bean out of her candy bag. "I wish he could see you, Percy. He would be so proud." "How old was I?" Percy asked. "I mean when he left." Sally watched the flames. "He was only with me for one summer, Percy. Right here on this beach. This cabin. But he knew me as a baby." "No honey, he knew I was expecting a baby, but he never saw you. He had to leave before you were born." Percy nodded, obviously feeling a little hurt that his father never really met him. Also he was angry at his father for going on that ocean voyage, for not having the guts to marry his mom. He'd left them, and now they stuck with smelly Gabe. "Are you going to send me away again?" Percy asked. "To another boarding school?" Sally pulled a marshmallow from the fire. "I don't know, honey." Her voice was heavy. I think we will have to do something." "Because you don't want me around." Percy regretted the words as soon as they were out. His mom's eyes welled with tears. She took his hand, squeezed it tight. "Oh, Percy, no. I have to, honey, for your own good. I have to send you away." Her words reminded him of what Mr. Brunner had said, that it was best for him to leave Yancey. "Because I'm not normal," Percy said. "You say that as if it's a bad thing, Percy. But you don't realize how important you are. I thought Yancey Academy would be far enough away. I thought you'd finally be safe." "Safe from what?" She met his eyes, and a flood of memories came back to him, all the weird, scary things that had ever happened to him, some of which he tried to forget. "I've tried to keep you as close to me as I could," Sally said. "They told me that was a mistake. But there's only one other option, Percy, the place your father wanted to send you. And I just can't stand to do it. My father wanted me to go to a special school." "Not a school," Sally said softly. "A summer camp." Why would my dad, who hadn't even stayed around long enough to see me born, talk to my mom about a summer camp? And if it was so important, why hadn't she ever mentioned it before? Percy thought. "I'm sorry, Percy," Sally said, seeing the look in my eyes. "But I can't talk about it. I couldn't send you to that place. It might mean saying goodbye to you for good." "For good? But if it's only a summer camp?" Sally turned toward the fire, and Percy knew from her expression that if he asked her any more questions she would start to cry. "But Naruto?" Naruto was packing his bag. "Why we are going a summer camp?" Karasu asked. "To find my answers question," Naruto said. "Do you know how we can go there?" "Mr. Brunner is already there. We can follow his energy signature," Naruto said. "Now time to take a nap. And dream." That night both Percy and Naruto had a vivid dream. It was storming on the beach, and three beautiful animals, a white horse, a golden eagle, and the pitch-black raven, was trying to kill each other at the edge of the surf. Well, the raven was not doing much. It just hovered in midair, watching the two fights, and only with a mild look of interest. Of course it would attack at certain times. The eagle swooped down and slashed the horse's muzzle with its huge talons. The horse reared up and kicked at the eagle's wings. The raven then decided to claw at the eagle a bit before doing the same to the horse. As they fought, the ground rumbled and a monstrous voice chuckled somewhere beneath the earth, goading the animals to fight harder. Naruto saw Percy ran toward them to stop them from killing each other, but he was running in slow motion. He saw the eagle dive down, its beak for the horse's wide eyes, while the raven decides to help out its flying companion, and Percy screamed, "No." Naruto waked up from a dream. Weary dream, he thought. "What happened?" Karasu asked. "Just dream, but it was felt real." "With Percy?" Percy woke up. Outside, it really was storming, the kind of storm that cracks trees and blows down houses. There was no horse or eagle on the beach, just lightning making false daylight and 20-foot waves pounding the dunes like artillery. But the next thunderclap, his mom woke. She sat up, eyes wide, and said hurricane. Percy knew that was crazy. Long Island never sees hurricanes this early in the summer. But the ocean seemed to have forgotten. Over the roar of the wind, he heard a distant bellow, an angry, tortured sound that made his hair stand on end. Then a much closer noise, like mallets in the sand. A desperate voice, someone yelling, pounding on the cabin door. Sally sprang out of bed in her nightgown and threw open the lock. Grover stood framed in the doorway against a backdrop of pouring rain. But he wasn't exactly same Grover, he knows. Searching all night, Grover said to Percy. What were you thinking? Sally looked at Percy in terror, not scared of Grover, but of why he'd come. Percy, she shouted. What happened at school? What didn't you tell me? Percy was frozen, looking at Grover. He couldn't understand what he was seeing. Those Uchiha aloi theoi. Grover yelled. It's right behind me. Didn't you tell her? Percy was too shocked to register that Grover just cursed in ancient Greek, and he did understand him perfectly. He was too shocked to wonder how Grover had gotten here by himself in the middle of the night. Because Grover didn't have his pants on and where his legs should be. Sally looked at him sternly and talked in a tone she'd never used before. Percy, tell me now. Percy stammered something about the old ladies at the fruit stand and Mrs. Dodds, and his mom stared at him, her face deathly pale in the flashes of lightning. She grabbed her purse, tossed Percy his rain jacket and said, get in the car. Both of you. Go. Grover ran for the Camaro, but he wasn't running, exactly. He was trotting, shaking his shaggy hindquarters, and suddenly his story about a muscular disorder in his legs made sense to Percy. He understood how he could run so fast and still limp when he walked. Because where his feet should be, there were no feet. There were cloven hooves. They didn't notice a raven, who was watching the whole scene, disappeared with a puff of smoke. They tore through the night along dark country roads. The wind slammed against the Camaro. Rain lashed the windshield. Percy didn't know how his mom could see anything, but she kept her foot on the gas. Every time there was a flash of lightning, Percy looked at Grover sitting next to him in the back seat and he wondered if he did go insane or if he was wearing a shag carpet pants. So, Grover, you and my mom know each other? Percy asked to finally find his voice. Grover's eyes flitted to the rearview mirror, though there were no cars behind us. Not exactly, he said. I mean, we've never met in person. But she knew I was watching you. Watching me? Keeping tabs on you and Naruto, making sure you two were okay. So, where is Naruto? I thought he was with you, he said. He didn't come with us. He had something to do. Grover, what are you, exactly? That doesn't matter right now. It doesn't matter. From the waist down, my best friend is a donkey. Grover let out a sharp throaty, blah ha ha. Percy had heard him make that sound before, but he did always assume it was a nervous laugh. Now he realized it was more of an irritated bleat. Goat. Grover cried. What? I'm goat from the waist down. You just said it didn't matter. Blah ha ha. There are satyrs who would trample you under hoof for such an insult. Whoa, wait, satyrs. You mean like Mr. Brunner's myths? Were those old ladies at the fruit stand a myth, Percy? Was Mrs. Dodds a myth? So you admit there was a Mrs. Dodds? Of course. Then why? The less you knew, the fewer monsters you'd attract, Grover said. We put mist over the human's eyes. We hoped you'd think the kindly one was a hallucination. But it was no good. You started to realize who you are. Wait a minute, what do you mean? The weird bellowing noise rose up again somewhere behind us, closer than before. Whatever was chasing us was still on our trail. Percy, Sally said, there's too much to explain and not enough time. We have to get you to safety. Safety from what? Who's after me? Oh, nobody much, Grover said, obviously still miffed about the donkey comment. Just, the Lord of the Dead and a few of his bloodthirsty minions. Grover. Sorry, Mrs. Jackson. Could you drive faster, please? Percy tried to wrap his head around all this madness. His mom made a hard left. They swerved onto a narrower road, racing past darkened farmhouses and wooded hills, and pick your own strawberry signs on white picket fences. Where are we going? Percy asked. The summer camp I told you about, Sally said. Her voice was tight, she was trying for Percy's sake not to be scared. The place your father wanted to send you. The place you didn't want me to go. Please, dear, Sally said. This is hard enough. Try to understand. You're in danger. Because some old ladies cut yarn. Those weren't old ladies, Grover said. Those were the fates. Do you know what it means, the fact they appeared in front of you? They only do that when someone's about to die. Whoa. You said you? No, I didn't. I said someone. You meant you. As in me. I meant you, like someone. Not you, you. Boys. Sally said. She pulled the wheel hard to the right and Percy got a glimpse of a figure she'd swerved to avoid, a dark fluttering shape now lost behind them in the storm. "What was that?" Percy asked. "We're almost there," Sally said, ignoring his question. "Another mile, please please please." Outside, nothing but rain and darkness. Percy thought about Mrs. Dodds and the moment when she changed into the thing with pointed teeth and leathery wings. His limbs went numb from delayed shock. She really hadn't been human. She'd meant to kill him. Then he thought about Mr. Brunner and the sword he had thrown him. Before he could ask Grover about that. There was a blinding flash, a jaw-rattling boom. And the car explodes and land on the ground upside down. Percy peeled his forehead off the back of the driver's seat and said, "Ow." "Percy?" Sally shouted. "I'm okay." Percy tried to shake off the daze. He wasn't dead. The car hadn't really exploded. They did swerve into a ditch. Their driver's side doors wedged in the mud. The roof had cracked open like an eggshell and rain was pouring in. Lightning. That was the only explanation. They blasted right off the road. Next to him in the back seat was a big motionless lump. Grover. Grover slumped over, blood trickling from the side of his mouth. Percy shook his furry hip. "No. Even if you are a half-barnyard animal, you're my best friend and I don't want you to die," Percy thought. Grover groaned, "Food." "He is alright." "Percy," Sally said. "We have to," her voice faltered. In a flash of lightning, through the mud-spattered rear windshield, Percy saw a figure lumbering toward us on the shoulder of the road. The sight of it made his skin crawl. It was a dark silhouette of a huge guy, like a football player. He seemed to be holding a blanket over his head. His top half was bulky and fuzzy. His upraised hands made it look like he had horns. "Who is?" "Percy," Sally said, deadly serious. "Get out of the car." She tried the driver's side, but all the mud was blocking their way out. "Climb out the passenger's side," she said to Percy. "Percy, you have to run. Do you see that big tree?" "What?" Another flash of lightning and through the smoking hole in the roof, Percy saw the tree she meant. A huge White House Christmas tree-sized pine at the crest of the nearest hill. "That's the property line," Sally said. "Get over that hill and you'll see a big farmhouse down in the valley. Run and don't look back. Yell for help. Don't stop until you reach the door." "Mom, you're coming too." Her face was pale, her eyes as sad as when she looked at the ocean. "No." Percy shouted. "You are coming with me. Help me carry Grover." "Food." Grover moaned, a little louder. Percy saw the man with the blanket on his head kept coming toward them, making his grunting, snorting noises. As he got closer, Percy realized he wasn't holding a blanket over his head because there was no blanket. It was his head and the points were his horns. "He doesn't want us," Sally said. "He wants you. Besides, I can't cross the property line." "But we don't have time, Percy. Go. Please." He climbed across Grover and pushed the door open into the rain. "We're going together. Come on, Mom. I told you. Mom. I am not leaving you. Help me with Grover." Percy didn't wait for her answer. He scrambled outside, dragging Grover from the car. He was surprisingly light, but Percy couldn't have carried him very far if his mother hadn't come to his aid. Together, they draped Grover's arms over their shoulders and started stumbling uphill through the wet waist-high grass. Glancing back, Percy got my first clear look at the monster. He was 7 feet tall, easy, his arms and legs like something from the cover of Muscle Man magazine, bulging biceps and triceps and a bunch of other caps, all stuffed like baseballs under vein-webbed skin. He wore no clothes except underwear, bright white Fruit of the Looms, which would have looked funny, except that the top half of his body was so scary. Coarse brown hair started at about his belly button and got thicker as it reached his shoulders. His neck was a mass of muscle and fur leading up to his enormous head, which had a snout as long as his arm, snotty nostrils with a gleaming brass ring, cruel black eyes, and horns, enormous black and white horns. Percy recognized the monster, all right. He had been in one of the first stories Mr. Brunner told them. He blinked the rain out of his eyes. "That's Asifi's son," Sally said. "I wish I'd known how badly they want to kill you. But he's the Min." "Don't say his name," she warned. "Names have power." The pine tree was still way too far, 100 yards uphill at least. Percy glanced behind him again. The Minotaur hunched over the car, looking in the windows or not looking, exactly. More like snuffling, nuzzling. Percy wasn't sure why he bothered, since he was only about 50 feet away. "Food?" Grover moaned. "SHH," Percy told him. "Mom, what's he doing? Doesn't he see us?" "His sight and hearing are terrible," Sally said. "He goes by smell. But he'll figure out where we are soon enough." As if on cue, the Minotaur bellowed in rage. He picked up Gabe's Camaro by the torn roof, the chassis creaking and groaning. He raised the car over his head and threw it down the road. It slammed into the wet asphalt and skidded in a shower of sparks for about half a mile before coming to a stop. The gas tank exploded. Not a scratch, Percy remembered Gabe saying. Percy, Sally said. When he sees us, he'll charge. Wait until the last second, then jump out of the way directly sideways. He can't change directions very well once he's charging. Do you understand? How do you know all this? I've been worried about an attack for a long time. I should have expected this. I was selfish, keeping you near me. Keeping me near you. But. Another bellow of rage, and the bullman started tramping uphill. He'd smelled us. The pine tree was only a few more yards, but the hill was getting steeper and slicker. Looking behind them, they saw the bullman was picking up pace and getting closer and closer to them. Sally exhausted, but she shouldered Grover. Go, Percy. Separate. Remember what I said. Percy sprinted to the left, turned, and saw the creature bearing down on him. His black eyes glowed with hate. He reeked like rotten meat. He lowered his head and charged, those razor-sharp horns aimed straight at his chest. Percy thought, I could never outrun this thing. He held his ground, and at the last moment, he jumped to the side. The Minotaur stormed past like a freight train, then bellowed with frustration and turned, but not toward Percy this time, to his mother, Sally, who was setting Grover down in the grass. They reached the crest of the hill. Down the other side, Percy saw a valley, just as his mother had said, and the lights of a farmhouse glowing yellow through the rain. But that was half a mile away. We'd never make it, Percy thought. The Minotaur grunted, pawing the ground. He kept eyeing Sally, who was now retreating slowly downhill, back toward the road, trying to lead him away from Grover. Run, Percy. She shouted. I can't go any farther. Run. The Minotaur charged her. She tried to sidestep, as she told Percy to do, but then he had learned his lesson. His hand shot out and grabbed her by the neck as she tried to get away. He lifted her as she struggled, kicking and pummeling the air. Mom! Percy yelled. Sally caught Percy's eyes, managed to choke out one last word, go. Then, with an angry roar, the monster closed his fists around her neck and she dissolved before Percy's eyes, melting into light, a shimmering golden form, as if she were a holographic projection. A blinding flash and she was simply gone. No. Percy saw the Minotaur bore down on Grover, who lay helpless in the grass. The monster hunched over, snuffling him, as if he were about to lift Grover up and make him dissolve too. Percy stripped off his red rain jacket. Hey. He screamed, waving the jacket, running to one side of the monster. Hey, stupid. Ground beef. Rawr. The Minotaur turned toward him, shaking his meaty fists. Percy patted his back to the big pine tree and waved his red jacket in front of the Minotaur. He charged too fast, his arms out to grab him whichever way he tried to dodge. Percy's legs tensed. He couldn't jump sideways, so he leaped straight up, kicking off from the creature's head, using it as a springboard, turning in midair, and landing on his neck. How did I do that? Percy didn't have time to figure it out. A millisecond later, the Minotaur's head slammed into the tree and the impact nearly knocked his teeth out. The Minotaur staggered around, trying to shake him, but he locked his arms around his horns to keep from being thrown. The smell of rotten meat burned his nostrils. The Minotaur shook himself around and bucked like a rodeo bull. Meanwhile, Grover started groaning on the grass. Percy wanted to yell at him to shut up. Food. Grover moaned. The Minotaur wheeled toward him, pawed the ground again, and got ready to charge. In the range, Percy got both hands around one horn and pulled backward with all his might. The Minotaur tensed, gave a surprised grunt, then snap. The bullman screamed and flung him through the air. He landed flat on his back in the grass. His head smacked against a rock. Percy sat up, his vision was blurry, but he had a horn in his hands, a ragged bone weapon the size of a knife. The Minotaur charged. Without thinking, he rolled to one side and came up kneeling. As the monster barreled past, he tried to drive the broken horn straight into his side, right up under his furry ribcage. But he threw him toward Grover. Percy saw the Minotaur roared and charged toward them. Excuse me, a voice said from behind the Minotaur, and then someone punched him in the face with a strong force and sent him flying through a series of trees in the forest. Are you alright, Percy? Percy saw it was Naruto who punched the Minotaur. Naruto. What are you doing here? He asked. I will explain you later, Naruto said. He saw Grover. Take Grover and go. I will handle him. But. Rawr. Go. Percy managed to haul Grover up and staggered down into the valley, toward the lights of the farmhouse. Rawr. Naruto looked at the Minotaur, who was getting up on his feet. When they got in there, Percy fell to his knees. Looking up, he saw the familiar face of Mr. Brunner, who was giving them a serious look. He also saw a very pretty blonde-haired girl, whose hair looked curled like a princess. Then Naruto monster fight, Percy said and fell unconscious. What was he talking about? Blonde girl asked. Mr. Brunner said, Annabeth. That was when the ground-shaking impact occurred that rocked the forest. The tremor sent them off their feet to the ground. That can't be good, Annabeth said. That could be the monster's doing. I somehow doubt that, Mr. Brunner thought. Suddenly the Minotaur's body came crashing down in front of them, then began to disintegrate like crumbling sand, blown away in chunks by the wind. Mr. Brunner saw Naruto was clumsily coming toward them, with Minotaur's horn in his left hand. He was wearing a gray shirt, black pants, black shoes, and a black jacket with hood. What really caught his eye was his face. Naruto had short fangs in his mouth and slightly slitted pupils in his eyes. Also he had small purple-colored diamond mark on his forehead. "Hello, Mr. Brunner," Naruto said. He looked at the blonde girl. "And you are?" My name is Annabeth Chase." Naruto nodded. "Naruto Uchiha." He saw Percy and Grover. "They're unconscious," he said. "Bring them inside," Mr. Brunner said. "I'm Skip." "Good to see you again, Mr. Brunner," Naruto commented. "You already know my real name, Naruto," Mr. Brunner said. "The question is how." "Your name is Chiron," Naruto said. "Illusion does not work on me. I can easily see your horse half. After that it wasn't difficult to find your true name." "So you are from that world," Chiron said. Annabeth gave Chiron a look of confusion, while Naruto had a serious look on his face. "Do you know about the Element Nation?" he asked with narrowed eyes while Annabeth looked even more confused. "I hear things when I got to the annual meets of the gods," Chiron said. "Gods?" Chiron told Naruto all about Greek gods and their existence. "You are in the same boat as Percy. If you are indeed a child of the Big Three, then one of you has to decide the fate of the world at a later time as said in a prophecy of the oracle," Chiron said. "I am not interested, nor do I want to decide the fate of the world. If what you say is true, then I will leave it to Percy." "I see, just know that the prophecy says the time will come when the demigod is 16, so we have time." "Nothing is set in stone," Naruto said. "And I don't believe in the prophecy." "Very well," Chiron said. "If I am a kid of the Big Three, whose am I? We have an idea, but we must keep quiet until they claim you. Besides, being one of the Big Three's kids is kind of bad," Chiron stated. "Why?" "Because they swore an oath after World War II that they would not have kids anymore," Annabeth answered. "Whatever," Naruto said. "Now I will have a camper show you the cabin for later. Then you come back here. When Percy wakes up I will tell more about this, as I don't want to say this twice," Chiron said. "Very well, Naruto," and he followed him out the door. "Annabeth, please continue to watch Percy, please," Chiron ordered. Once outside, Naruto raised an eyebrow. This place was big. He looked around to see that the hill with the pine tree was not far from them. This tree has the soul in it, Naruto thought. Then he looked ahead to see a bunch of cabins in a U-shaped arc. "Claris, come here please," Chiron shouted. The girl turned her head and saw Chiron and one of the new guys everyone was talking about. Naruto noticed that she was pretty tall, strong-looking, and probably 2 years older than him. She looked gruff and had the look of a fighter. "What? I would like for you to show Naruto here around the cabins for the moment. I will probably have Annabeth show Naruto and Percy around camp later when the latter wakes up." "Fine, got to welcome the newbie anyway," Clara said with an evil smirk. Naruto raised an eyebrow for that. "Well, come with me," Claris called out, already walking away. He followed her all the way to the middle of the arc of cabins. "Okay, listen closely because I am only going to say this once. There are 12 cabins in all. Each one represents the Greek god it was made for. Their kids are the one who lives in there. Since you are new and have not been claimed yet, you will go to cabin 11, the Hermes cabin." Naruto nodded. "Who is your parent?" he asked. "The god of war," Claris pointed to a red cabin. "Right, now we have the other cabins. We got Demeter, Dionysus, Athena, Apollo, Aphrodite, Hephaestus, Hera, Zeus, Artemis and Poseidon," she said pointing to each. He looked at Zeus and Hera's and quirked an eyebrow. They got some pretty fancy cabins for nobody to use. He noticed that a Hades cabin was not there, odd, since he was part of the Big Three. "Now it is not to officially welcome you," Clara said, making a lot of people look to them and they grimaced. Claris was breaking in another newbie. Claris quickly reacted out and tried to grab Naruto. She along with everyone else gasped surprise when Naruto disappeared with a murder of crow. "What?" she shouted. Before she could do anything, she felt cold metal against her neck. "You're good, but not that good," Naruto said from behind her. He held kunai on her neck. "And thanks for tour." He put kunai back to his pocket. Claris was in deep shock. "Who is he?" she thought. They arrived in the big house. Chiron saw that Naruto looked bored and Classier looked a little lost. "As I thought, her welcome plan has failed," he thought. "You're back," he said. "Since Percy won't be fully awake until tomorrow, I would like for you to stay near here." "Okay, see you later, Chiron, Claris," Naruto said. He disappeared with a flock of crow. Claris shocked when he had disappeared front of her. "Who is he?" she asked to Chiron. "Front of pine tree." Naruto arrived at the pine tree. He looked at the tree with his Sharingan and saw strange energy. Interesting, it is life energy, Naruto thought. He looked around and noticed the energy had surrounded whole camp. And it is protecting the camp. Naruto closed his eyes and touched the tree by his left hand. Suddenly he felt pulling sensation. When he opened his eyes, he was in a large white room and was not alone. A girl stood across from him, staring at him with shock eyes. She had shoulder-length or short, spiky black hair, electric blue eyes and freckles across her nose. She was wearing some punk-style clothes. She is extremely pretty. Who are you? The girl asked. I am Naruto Uchiha, Naruto said. Who are you? Where are we? I am Thalia and we are in limbo. Thalia saw the boy in front of her. He was tall and handsome. He had pale skin with spicy midnight black hair and dark blue eyes. He was wearing a gray shirt, black pants, black shoes, and a black jacket with a hood. How did you come here? She asked. I don't know, and you? Naruto asked. It is the longest story. I have time, but first tell me, are you a demigod? Thalia nodded. Whose kid are you? Naruto asked. Thalia scowled a bit and said, Zeus and you? Naruto raised an eyebrow but didn't say much to her scowling. Not a clue. He looked at her and asked, are you ready to tell me your story? Thalia nodded. She told him about her journey with Luck and Abith. How they were found by a satyr named Grover Underwood who tried to get them to Camp Half-Blood. Together, they traveled to Camp Half-Blood but chased by monsters from the underworld. Once they reached camp, a horde of monsters attacked and she sacrificed her life on Half-Blood Hill to protect Annabeth, Luke, and Grover. To prevent her soul from going to Hades, Zeus turned her into a pine tree. Wow, you are brave, Naruto said. How long have you been here anyway? I think more than 5 years. I can come here. Then I guess I can keep you company now and then. Naruto said with a smile. Next time I will tell you my story, he said. Thalia smiled back. Thanks, I would like that. Well, see you next time, Thalia, Naruto said and gave her hug. He backed up from the hug and disappeared from there. See you later, Naruto, Thalia whispered to herself with a slight blush. Back in the normal world. Naruto saw it was morning. Didn't think I was in limbo that long, he thought, and disappeared. Naruto appeared in the big house. He saw Grover, Annabeth, and Chiron there around a table with another person he had not met yet. Good morning. They turned their heads and saw him. Good morning, Naruto, Chiron said, fully turning around. Anyway, I would like you to meet Mr. Naruto looked at the other man who was sitting around the table with a Coke can in his hand. He wore a leopard print shirt and had messy black hair and was a little on the chubby side and is rocking the bearded look. He looked like someone who coached a Pui soccer team. Well, I guess I must say it. Welcome to Camp Half-Blood. Mr. D said. Nice to meet you, Mr. Wine God, Naruto said. That is correct. Nice to see not all the demigods that first arrive here are idiots, Mr. D said. It is not difficult. I can sense you are God. Because your energy signature is different from others, Naruto said. Energy signature? Mr. D asked. Naruto is from that world, Chiron said. Mr. D surprised at this. You are from Element Nation, he said to Naruto. Well, I can honestly say that I have never been to your world. But I have heard about it from the other gods. What is Element Nation? Annabeth asked. Element Nation is another world, or you could say that it is another dimension. It is a dangerous place. Naruto is from that world, Chiron said. He told them about ninja, shinobi, chakra and some other detail. Wow, I never know that kind world exist, Grover said, and Annabeth nodded. Naruto Uchiha, are you related to Madara Uchiha? Mr. D asked. Naruto surprised at this. Yes, he is my grandfather, he said. Interesting, Mr. D said. What is interesting, Mr. D? Grover asked. I heard from other gods, Madara was powerful warrior. Alone he can destroy armies of the enemy. Also he was able to control the demon using his eyes, Mr. D said. Control demon using the eyes? Annabeth asked. Mr. D means this. Annabeth looked at Naruto. His normally dark blue eyes were red with 3 black tomos spinning inside them. This is Sharingan. He said and his eyes turned back to normal. So this is Sharingan, Mr. D asked. Naruto nodded. Oh Naruto, I almost forgot. These are yours, Chiron said as he took out 2 black fingerless gloves. Naruto took them and put them on hands. After examining them, he saw Jubi's red eye-like symbol on right glove. He channeled his chakra into it and it started to glow. As the glow faded, Naruto saw his right glove had now taken on the form of a black and red gauntlet that had a small chain linking it to a stinger-like blade on his middle finger. The stinger was about twice as long as the normal length of his fingers, slightly increasing his striking distance. Note. Imagine Soifun Suzumabachi's Shikai. Nice, Naruto said. Mr. D surprised by the amount of power rolling from him. Such power. He thought. I can tell that he is hiding his power. But Percy. Percy groaned as he opened his eyes. He was sitting in a deck chair on a huge porch, gazing across a meadow at green hills in the distance. He smelt strawberries in the air. There was a blanket over his legs, a pillow behind his neck. All that was great, but he had other things on his mind. Where am I? My tongue is dry and nasty, and every one of my teeth is hurt. He noticed on the table next to him was a tall drink. It looked like iced apple juice, with a green straw and a paper parasol stuck through a maraschino cherry. He reached for it with shaky hands and almost dropped it once he had lifted it off the table. "Careful," a familiar voice said. He saw Grover was leaning against the porch railing. Under one arm, he cradled a shoebox. He was wearing blue jeans, Converse high tops and a bright orange t-shirt that said Camp Half-Blood. "You saved my life," Grover said. The least I could do. I went back to the hill. I thought you might want this." He placed the shoebox in Percy's lap. Inside was a black and white bull's horn, the base jagged from being broken off, the tip splattered with dried blood. It wasn't a nightmare, Percy thought. "The Minotaur," he said. Percy, it isn't a good idea." "That's what they call him in the Greek myths, isn't it?" Percy demanded. "The Minotaur, half man, half bull." Grover shifted uncomfortably and asked, "You've been out for 2 days. How much do you remember?" "My mom, is she really?" Grover looked down. "I'm sorry." He sniffled. "I'm a failure. I'm the worst satyr in the world." Percy said, "It wasn't your fault." "Yes, it was. I was supposed to protect you." "Did my mother ask you to protect me?" "No. But that's my job. I'm a keeper. At least I was." "But why?" Percy suddenly felt dizzy, his vision swimming. "Don't strain yourself," Grover said. Here he helped Percy hold the glass and put the straw to his lips. Percy nodded reluctantly and began to sip of the drink. He recoiled at the taste. It was his mom's homemade blue chocolate chip cookies, turned to liquid form. He didn't realize that he had kept drinking it until it was gone. He looked into the glass, sure that he had just had a warm drink, to see that the ice cubes hadn't even melted. "How do you feel, Percy?" Grover asked. Percy said, "Like I could throw Nancy Bobofit 100 yards. "That's good," Grover said. "That's good. I don't think you could risk drinking any more of that stuff." "What do you mean?" Percy asked. Grover took the empty glass from Percy and set it back on the table. "Come on. Chiron and Mr. D are waiting." Percy's legs felt wobbly, trying to walk that far. Grover had offered to hold the Minotaur horn he was holding, but he refused. As they came around the opposite end of the house, Percy caught his breath. He thought they must have been on the north shore of Long Island, because on this side of the house, the valley marched all the way up to the water, which glittered about a mile in the distance. Between here and there, he simply couldn't process everything he was seeing. The landscape dotted with buildings that looked like ancient Greek architecture, an open-air pavilion, an amphitheater, a circular arena, except that they all looked brand new, their white marble columns sparkling in the sun. In a nearby sand pit, a dozen high school-age kids and satyrs played volleyball. Canoes glided across a small lake. Kids in bright orange t-shirts like Grover's were chasing each other around a cluster of cabins nestled in the woods. Some shot targets at an archery range. Others rode horses down a wooded trail, and some of their horses had wings. Percy saw down at the end of the porch, 2 men sat across from each other at a card table. The blonde-haired girl who'd spoon-fed him popcorn-flavored pudding was leaning on the porch rail next to them. Finally there was Naruto, who was playing a card game with both men. "That's Mr. D," Grover murmured to Percy. "He's the camp director. Be polite." "The girl, that's Annabeth Chase. She's just a camper, but she's been here longer than just about anybody. And you already know Chiron," he pointed at the guy whose back was to him. First, Percy realized he was sitting in the wheelchair. Then he recognized the tweed jacket, the thinning brown hair, the scraggly beard. "Mr. Brunner," he cried. "Ah, good, Percy," Mr. Brunner said. "Now we have 4 for Pinochle." He offered Percy a chair to the right of Mr. D, who looked at him with bloodshot eyes and heaved a great sigh. "Oh, I suppose I must say it. Welcome to Camp Half-Blood. There. Now, don't expect me to be glad to see you," Mr. D said. Thanks." Percy scooted a little farther away from him because if there was one thing he had learned from living with Gabe, it was how to tell when an adult has hit the happy juice. If Mr. D was a stranger to alcohol, he was a satyr. "Annabeth," Chiron called to the blonde girl. She came forward and Mr. Brunner introduced him. "This young lady nursed you back to health, Percy. Annabeth, my dear, why don't you go check Percy's bunk? We'll be putting him in cabin 11 with Naruto for now." Annabeth said, "Sure, Chiron." Percy looked at her. She was probably his age, maybe a couple of inches taller, and a whole lot more athletic looking. With her deep tan and her curly blonde hair, she was almost exactly what he thought a stereotypical California girl would look like, except her eyes ruined the image. They were startling gray, like storm clouds, pretty, but intimidating, too, as if she were analyzing the best way to take him down in a fight. Annabeth glanced at the Minotaur horn in Percy's hands, then back at him. Percy imagined she was going to say, "You fought with a Minotaur." Or "Wow, you're so awesome." Or something like that. Instead she said, "You drool when you sleep." Percy confused at first until he heard Naruto. "I bet you thought she was going to say that you were awesome of something that," he said. Percy asked, "Wait, what about you? What happened with that?" "I killed it for now," Naruto said. "Thank you," Percy said. "You, work here, Mr. Brunner." "Not Mr. Brunner," the Chiron or ex-Mr. Brunner said. "I'm afraid that was a pseudonym. You may call me Chiron." "Okay." Totally confused, Percy looked at the director. "And Mr. D, does that stand for something?" Idiot, Naruto thought. Mr. D stopped shuffling the cards. He looked Percy like he did just belched loudly. "Young man, names are powerful things. You don't just go around using them for no reason." "Oh, right. Sorry. I must say, Percy Chiron Brunner Broken, I'm glad to see you alive. It's been a long time since I've made a house call to a potential camper. I'd hate to think I've wasted my time." "House call?" "My year at Yancy Academy, to instruct you. We have satyrs at most schools, of course, keeping a lookout. But Grover alerted me as soon as he met you and Naruto. He sensed both of you were something special, so I decided to come upstate. I convinced the other Latin teacher to take a leave of absence." Percy tried to remember the beginning of the school year. It seemed like so long ago, but he did have a fuzzy memory of there being another Latin teacher my first week at Yancy. Then, without explanation, he had disappeared and Mr. Brunner had taken the class. "You came to Yancy just to teach me and Naruto?" Percy asked. Chiron nodded. "Honestly, I wasn't sure about you at first. We contacted your mother, let her know we were keeping an eye on you if you were ready for Camp Half-Blood. But you still had so much to learn. Nevertheless, you made it here alive, and that's always the first test." "Well, I had help from Naruto," Percy replied. "We know, and I am glad that both of you made it in pieces," Chiron said. "Naruto," Mr. D said, "your turn." Naruto nodded. "You do know how to play Pinochle?" Mr. D eyed Percy suspiciously. "I'm afraid not," Percy said. "I'm afraid not, sir." "Sir," Percy repeated. He liked the camp director less and less. Mr. D said, "Then tells me, how did he know?" He pointed at Naruto. "I don't know," Percy said. "Well," Mr. D told Percy, "it is, along with gladiator fighting and Pac-Man, one of the greatest games ever invented by humans. I would expect all civilized young men to know the rules." "I'm sure the boy can learn," Chiron said. "Please," Percy said, "what is this place? What am I doing here?" "Mr. Brunch Chiron, why would you go to Yancy Academy just to teach me?" Mr. D snorted. "I asked the same question." The camp director dealt the cards. Chiron smiled at Percy sympathetically. "Percy," he said. "Did your mother tell you nothing?" She said. Percy remembered her sad eyes, looking out over the sea. "She told me she was afraid to send me here, even though my father had wanted her to. She said that once I was here, I probably couldn't leave. She wanted to keep me close to her." "Typical," Mr. D said. "That's how they usually get killed. Young man, are you bidding or not?" "What?" Percy asked. Mr. D explained him impatiently how you bid in Pinochle, and so he did. "I'm afraid there's too much to tell," Chiron said. "I'm afraid our usual orientation film won't be enough." "Orientation film?" Percy asked and then rounded on Naruto. "And you don't seem to be surprised by this stuff at all." Naruto shrugged and said, "Well, since I woke up earlier, I was told this already, and I told them about the other world, and they seemed to understand." Percy just blinked at him owlishly. "No," Chiron decided. "Well, Percy. You know your friend Grover is a satyr. You know he pointed to the horn in the shoebox that you fought with the Minotaur. No small feat, either, lad. What you may not know is that great powers are at work in your life. Gods, the forces you call the Greek gods, are very much alive." Percy stared at the others around the table. He waited for somebody to yell, "Not." But all he got was Mr. D yelling, "Oh, a royal marriage. Trick. Trick." He cackled as he tallied up his points. "Mr. D," Grover asked timidly, "if you're not going to eat it, could I have your Diet Coke can?" "Eh? Oh, all right." Grover bit a huge shard out of the empty aluminum can and chewed it mournfully. "Wait," Percy said to Chiron. "You're telling me there's such a thing as God?" "Well, now," Chiron said. "God, capital G, God. That's a different matter altogether. We will not deal with the metaphysical." "Metaphysical? But you were just talking about—" "Gods, plural, as in, great beings that control the forces of nature and human endeavors. The immortal gods of Olympus. That's a smaller matter." "Smaller?" "Yes, quite. The gods we discussed in Latin class." "Zeus," Percy said. "Hera, Apollo, you mean them?" There it was again, distant thunder on a cloudless day. "Young man," said Mr. D, "I would really be less casual about throwing those names around if I were you." "But they're stories," Percy said. "They're myths to explain lightning and the seasons and stuff. They're what people believed before there was science." "Science?" Mr. D scoffed. "And tell me, Perseus Jackson." Percy flinched when he said his real name, which he never told anybody. "What will people think of your science 2000 years from now?" Mr. D continued. They will call it primitive mambo jumbo. That's what. Oh, I love mortals. They have absolutely no sense of perspective. They think they've come so far. And have them, Chiron. Look at this boy and tell me." Percy raised a brow at the camp director. The way he called them mortals, it was like he wasn't. He could see why Grover was keeping his mouth shut and his eyes on his cards. "Percy," Chiron said, "you may choose to believe or not, but the fact is that immortal means immortal. Can you imagine that for a moment, never dying? Never fading? Existing, just as you are, for all time?" "Lonely," Naruto muttered, and Percy heard him. "You mean, whether people believed in you or not," Percy said. "Exactly," Chiron agreed. "If you were God, how would you like being called a myth, an old story to explain lightning? What if I told you, Perseus Jackson, that someday people would call you a myth just created to explain how little boys can get over losing their mothers?" Percy said, "I wouldn't like it. But I don't believe in gods." "Oh, you'd better," Mr. D murmured. "Before one of them incinerate you." Grover said, Please sir. He's just lost his mother. He's in shock." "The lucky thing, too," Mr. D grumbled, playing a card. "Bad enough I'm confined to this miserable job, working with boys who don't even believe." He waved his hand, and a goblet appeared on the table, as if the sunlight had bent momentarily and woven the air into glass. The goblet filled itself with red wine. Percy's jaw dropped, but Chiron hardly looked up. "Mr. D," he warned, "your restrictions." Mr. D looked at the wine and feigned surprise. "Dear me." He looked at the sky and yelled, "Old habits. Sorry." More thunder. He waved his hand again, and the wineglass changed into a fresh can of Diet Coke. He sighed unhappily, popped the top of the soda, and went back to his card game. Chiron winked at Percy. Mr. D offended his father a while back, took a fancy to a wood nymph that had been declared off limits. "A wood nymph," Percy repeated, who's still staring at the Diet Coke can like it was from outer space. "Yes," Mr. D confessed. "Father loves to punish me. The first time, prohibition. Ghastly. Absolutely horrid 10 years. The second time, well, she really was pretty and I couldn't stay away the second time, he sent me here. Half-Blood Hill. Summer camp for brats like you. Be a better influence, he told me. Work with youths and not tearing them down. Ha. Absolutely unfair." He sounded about 6 years old, like a pouting little kid. And Percy stammered, "Your father is?" Immortals, Chiron," Mr. D said. "I thought you taught this boy the basics." "My father is Zeus, of course." Percy ran through D names from Greek mythology, wine, the skin of a tiger. The satyrs that all seemed to work here. The way Grover cringed, as if Mr. D were his master. "You're Dionysus," Percy said. "The god of wine." Mr. D rolled his eyes. "What do they say these days, Grover? Do the children say, well, duh?" "Why yes, Mr. D. Then, well, duh. Percy Jackson. Did you think I was Aphrodite, perhaps? You're God." "Yes, child. The god you." "I think that we all get that fact now," Naruto said, not looking up from his cards. Percy didn't hear him. "Are you sure that you're God? You don't look like one," he said. Mr. D turned to look at Percy straight on, and he saw a kind of purplish fire in his eyes, a hint that this whiny, plump little man was only showing him the tiniest bit of his true nature. He saw visions of grapevines choking unbelievers to death, drunken warriors insane with battle lust, sailors screaming as their hands turned into flippers, their faces elongating into dolphin snouts. "Would you like to test me, child?" Mr. D said quietly. No, sir," Percy said. The fire died a little. Mr. D turned back to his card game. "I believe I win." "Not quite, Mr. D," Chiron said. He set down a straight, tallied the points, and said, "The game goes to me." "Actually, Chiron," Naruto said and set his hand down to show a double roundabout. "I win," he said, leaning back. "Oh, I think I'm beginning to like this boy, Chiron," Mr. D said with a smirk of his own. His statement drew wide eyes from Grover and Chiron. He got up, and Grover rose, too. "I'm tired," Mr. D said. "I believe I'll take a nap before the sing-along tonight. But first, Grover, we need to talk, again, about your less than perfect performance on this assignment." Grover's face beaded with sweat. "Why yes sir." Mr. D turned to me. "Cabin 11, Percy Jackson. And mind your manners. Take Naruto with you since he will be going as well." He swept into the farmhouse. Grover follows miserably. "Will Grover be okay?" Percy asked Chiron. Chiron nodded, though he looked a bit troubled. Old Dionysus isn't really mad. He just hates his job. He's been grounded, I guess you would say, and he can't stand waiting another century before he's allowed to go back to Olympus. Mount Olympus, Percy said. You're telling me there really is a palace there? Well now, there's Mount Olympus in Greece. And then there's the home of the gods, the convergence point of their powers, which did indeed used to be on Mount Olympus. It's still called Mount Olympus, out of respect to the old ways, but the palace moves, Percy, just as the gods do. You mean the Greek gods are here? Like in America? Well, certainly. The gods move with the heart of the West. The what? Percy, Naruto spoke. The West means where the major power is in the world. You see, it has moved from Greece, which was at one point of power, then moved to Rome, to Germany, to France, to Spain, for a while. Now America is the great power of the West. And so Olympus is here. It was all too much for Percy. Who are you, Chiron? Who am I? He asked. Chiron smiled. He shifted his weight as if he were going to get up out of his wheelchair. But it is impossible. He is paralyzed from the waist down, Percy thought. Who are you? Chiron mused. Well, that's the question we all want answered, isn't it? But for now, we should get you a bunk in cabin 11. There will be new friends to meet. And plenty of time for lessons tomorrow. Besides, there will be smokes at the campfire tonight and I simply adore chocolate. And then he did rise from his wheelchair. But there was something odd about the way he did it. His blanket fell away from his legs, but the legs didn't move. His waist kept getting longer, rising above his belt. At first, I thought he was wearing very long white velvet underwear, but as he kept rising out of the chair, taller than any man, I realized that the velvet underwear wasn't underwear, it was the front of an animal, muscle and sinew under coarse white fur. And the wheelchair wasn't a chair. It was a container, an enormous box on wheels, and it must have been magic because there's no way it would have held all of him. A leg came out, long and knock-kneed, with a huge polished hoof. Then another front leg, then hindquarters, and then the box was empty, nothing but a metal as hell with a couple of fake human legs attached. Percy stared at the horse that had just sprung from the wheelchair. A huge white stallion. But where its neck should be was the upper body of their Latin teacher, smoothly grafted to the horse's trunk. What a relief, the centaur said. I'd been cooped up in there so long, my fetlocks had fallen asleep. Now, come Percy Jackson. Let's meet the other campers. Once Percy got over the fact that his Latin teacher was a half-horse, he and Naruto had a nice tour, though they were careful not to walk behind him, because you can never trust a horse's backside. They passed the volleyball pit. Several of the campers nudged each other. One pointed to the minotaur horn Percy was carrying. Another said, it's them. Most of the campers were older than both. Their sadder friends were bigger than Grover, all of them trotting around in orange Camp Half-Blood t-shirts, with nothing else to cover their bare shaggy hindquarters. Percy wasn't normally shy, but the way they stared at him made him uncomfortable. He felt like they were expecting him to do a flip or something. As for Naruto, he didn't care. Percy looked back at the farmhouse. It was a lot bigger than he did realize, 4 stories tall, sky blue with white trim, like an upscale seaside resort. He was checking out the brass eagle weather vane on top when something caught his eye, a shadow in the uppermost window of the attic gable. Something had moved the curtain, just for a second, and he got the distinct impression he'd being watched. What's up there? Percy asked Chiron. Chiron looked where Percy was pointing, and his smile faded. Just the attic. Somebody lives there? No, Chiron said with finality. Not a single living thing. Naruto looked at the window of the attic and thought, nothing leaving. Hum along, Percy and Naruto, Chiron said, his light-hearted tone now a little forced. Lots to see. They walked through the strawberry fields, where campers were picking bushels of berries, while a satyr played a tune on a reed pipe. Chiron told them the camp grew a nice crop for export to New York restaurants in Mount Olympus. It pays our expenses, Chiron explained. And the strawberries take almost no effort. He said Mr. D had this effect on fruit-bearing plants. They just went crazy when he was around. It worked best with wine grapes, but Mr. D restricted from growing those, so they grew strawberries instead. Naruto watched the satyr playing his pipe. His music was causing lines of bugs to leave the strawberry patch in every direction, like refugees fleeing a fire. Interesting, it is like sound-based ninjutsu, he thought. Then he heard Percy ask Chiron about Grover. Grover won't get in too much trouble, will he? Percy asked Chiron. I mean, he was a good protector really. Chiron sighed. He shed his tweed jacket and draped it over his horse's back like a saddle. Grover has big dreams, Percy. Perhaps bigger than being reasonable. To reach his goal, he must first prove great courage by succeeding as a keeper, finding a new camper, and bringing him safely to Half-Blood Hill. But he did that. I might agree with you, Chiron said. But it is not my place to judge. Dionysus and the Council of Cloven Elders must decide. I'm afraid they might not see this assignment as a success. After all, Grover lost you and Naruto in New York. Then there's the unfortunate fate of your mother. And the fact that Grover was unconscious when you dragged him over the property line. It was Naruto who killed the Minotaur. The council might question whether this shows any courage on Grover's part. Percy wanted to protest. None of what happened was Grover's fault. He also felt really guilty. If he hadn't given Grover the slip at the bus station, he might not have gotten in trouble. He'll get a second chance, won't he? Jiren winced. I'm afraid that was Grover's second chance, Percy. The council was not anxious to give him another, either, after what happened the first time, 5 years ago. Olympus knows, I advised him to wait longer before trying again. He's still so small for his age. How old is he? Oh, 28. What? And he's in 6th grade. Satyrs mature half as fast as humans, Percy. Grover has been the equivalent of a middle school student for the past 6 years. That is surprising, Naruto thought. That's horrible, Percy said. White Chiron agreed. At any rate, Grover is a late bloomer, even by satyr standards, and not yet very accomplished at woodland magic. Alas, he was anxious to pursue his dream. Perhaps now he will find some other career. That's not fair, Percy said. What happened the first time? Was it really so bad? Jiren looked away quickly. Yes, Thalia turned into a tree, Naruto thought. Let's move along, shall we? Jiren said. Jiren, Percy said. If the gods and Olympus and all that are real. Yes, child. Does that mean the underworld is real, too? Jiren's expression darkened. He looked at Naruto for a split second, but Naruto caught it. Yes, child. He paused, as if choosing his words carefully. There is a place where spirits go after death. But for now, until we know more, I would urge you to put that out of your mind. What do you mean, until we know more? Come, Percy, Naruto. Let's see the woods. As they got closer, Percy and Naruto realized how huge the forest was. It took up at least a quarter of the valley, with trees so tall and thick, you could imagine nobody had been in there since the Native Americans. Jiren said, the woods are stocked if you care to try your luck, but go armed. Stocked with what? Percy asked. Armed with what? You'll see. Capture the flag is Friday night. Do you have your own sword and shield? Percy asked both. Percy said, my own? No, Jiren said. I don't suppose you do. I think a size 5 will do. I'll visit the armory later. Then he looked at Naruto. I already have a weapon, Naruto said, with black flash a black katana appeared in his hand. Jiren saw a weapon. He sensed that death aura was coming from it. Where did he get that kind weapon? Percy wanted to ask what kind of summer camp had an armory, but there was too much else to think about, so the tour continued. He saw the archery range, the canoeing lake, the stables, the javelin range, the sing-along amphitheater, and the arena where Jiren said they held sword and spear fights. Sword and spear fighting? Percy asked. Cabin challenges and all that, Jiren explained. Not lethal. Usually. Oh, yes, and there's the mess hall. He pointed to an outdoor pavilion framed in white Grecian columns on a hill overlooking the sea. There were a dozen stone picnic tables. No roof. No walls. What do you do when it rains? Percy asked. Jiren looked at him as if I'd gone a little weird. We still have to eat, don't we? Percy decided to drop the subject. Finally, he showed him the cabins. There were 12 of them, nestled in the woods by the lake. Naruto had already seen them earlier. Jiren, Naruto said. Yes, Jiren said. I had already seen all of this. So I will meet you later. Jiren nodded and Naruto disappeared from view. Naruto reappeared front of Thalia's tree. He touched the tree and entered in limbo. Inside limbo. Naruto looked Thalia, she was sitting on the floor. He said, hey. Thalia saw Naruto. Naruto, what are you doing here? She asked. I did promise you, so I'm here to tell you my story. Naruto sat beside her. Your story? Yes, I am from another world. Naruto said. This surprised Thalia. He told her his story of his birth. He told her about shinobi, ninja, chakra etc. How did you get here? Naruto said, that story was another time, but first, this is for you. He took the necklace. It was a blue stone that attached by black string. The Japanese kanji of the dragon was written on it. What is this? Thalia asked. My gift. Naruto puts the necklace on her neck. Thalia saw the necklace. It is beautiful, she said. It is special. If you ever want to talk with me or want my help, just touch that stone on a necklace. I will always there for you, Naruto said and he stood up. Thanks Naruto, Thalia said. She kissed Naruto on his cheek. Slight blush was visible on her cheek. You're welcome, Naruto said with his own blush was on his face. He disappeared from there. Thalia looked at necklace with a small smile on her lips. With Percy. You said your name was Chiron. Are you really Percy asked. Chiron smiled down at Percy. The Chiron from the stories. Trainer of Hercules and all that. Yes, Percy, I am. He said. But, shouldn't you be dead? Tyron paused and said, I honestly don't know about should be. The truth is, I can't be dead. You see, eons ago the gods granted my wish. I could continue the work I loved. I could be a teacher of heroes as long as humanity needed me. I gained much from that wish and I gave up much. But I'm still here, so I can only assume I'm still needed. Percy thought about being a teacher for 3,000 years. He asked, doesn't it ever get boring? No, Chiron said. Horribly depressing, at times, but never boring. Why depressing? Tyron seemed to turn hard of hearing again. Oh, look, he said. Annabeth is waiting for us. Percy saw Annabeth was reading a book in front of the last cabin on the left, number 11. When they reached her, she looked him over critically, like she was still thinking about how much he drooled. Percy tried to see what she was reading, but he couldn't make out the title. Percy thought, was my dyslexia acting up? Then he realized the title wasn't even English. The letters looked Greek. There were pictures of temples and statues and different kinds of columns, like architecture book. Annabeth Chiron said, I have master's archery class at noon. Take Percy from here. Yes sir. Cabin 11, Chiron told Percy, gesturing toward the doorway. Make yourself at home. He left both alone. Where is Naruto? Annabeth asked to Percy. I'm here, Naruto said, from behind her. Annabeth dropped her book and moved away from the spot. She saw Naruto. Don't do that. She shouted. Naruto ignored her and he picked up a book which she had dropped on the ground. He opened a front page and started reading it. An interesting book, he said. Annabeth surprised at this. She asked, you can read it. Yes, I know Greek, Japanese, English, French, Latin etc. Ek. Really? Annabeth said. Yes. Naruto gave her back her book. Annabeth took the book from him. Wow, she said. Again Naruto succeeded to impress the girl Percy thought. They looked inside cabin of all the cabins, it looked the most like a regular old summer camp cabin, with the emphasis on the old. The threshold worn down, the brown paint peeling. Over the doorway was one of those doctor's symbols, a winged pole with 2 snakes wrapped around it. Inside, it packed with people, both boys and girls, way more than the number of bunk beds. Sleeping bags spread all over on the floor. It looked like a gym where the Red Cross had set up an evacuation center. Naruto and Percy stood in the doorway, looking at the kids. They were staring at them. Well? Annabeth prompted. Go on. Percy entered into the cabin and tripped coming in the door and made a total fool of him. Good impression, Percy, Naruto said, which got snickers from the campers. He and Annabeth walked inside. Annabeth announced, Percy Jackson and Uchiha Naruto meet cabin 11. Regular or undetermined? Somebody asked. Percy didn't know what to say, but Naruto said, undetermined. Everybody groaned. The guy who was a little older than the rest came forward. Now, campers. That's what we're here for. Welcome, Percy and Naruto. You can have that spot on the floor, right over there. The guy was about 19. He was tall and muscular, with short cropped sandy hair and a friendly smile. He wore an orange tank top, cutoffs, sandals, and a leather necklace with 5 different colored clay beads. The only thing unsettling about his appearance was a thick white scar that ran from just beneath his right eye to his jaw, like an old knife slash. This is Luke, Annabeth said, and her voice sounded different somehow. Naruto raised his eyebrow, and Percy glanced over and would have sworn she was blushing. She saw Percy looking, and her expression hardened again. He's your counselor for now. This is luck. I can sense negative emotion coming from him. I have to keep eyes on him, Naruto thought. For now? Percy asked. You're undetermined, Luke explained patiently. They don't know what cabin to put you 2 in, so you're here. Cabin 11 takes all newcomers, all visitors. Naturally, we would. Hermes, our patron, is the god of travelers. Percy looked at the tiny section of floor they'd given Naruto and him. He had nothing to put there to mark it as his own. Just the Minotaur's horn. But then he remembered that Hermes was also the god of thieves. He looked around at the campers' faces, some sullen and suspicious, some grinning stupidly, some eyeing him as if they were waiting for a chance to pick his pockets. How long will I be here? Percy asked. Good question, Luke said. Until you're determined. How long will that take? The campers all laughed. It will take a long time, Percy, Naruto said. Come on, Annabeth told Percy. I'll show you the volleyball court. I've already seen it. Come on. Annabeth grabbed Percy's wrist and dragged him outside. Naruto saw this and raised his eyebrows at this. Well, the kids of cabin 11 were laughing. When they were a few feet away, Annabeth said, Jackson, you have to do better than that. What? Percy asked. Annabeth rolled her eyes and mumbled under her breath, I can't believe I thought you were the one. What's your problem? Percy asked in an angry tone. All I know is, I fought some bull guy and one more thing, and it was Naruto who had killed him. Don't talk like that. Annabeth said. You know how many kids at this camp wish they'd had your chance. They get killed. To fight the Minotaur. What do you think we train for? Percy shook his head. Look, if the thing I fought really was the Minotaur, the same one in the stories. Yes. Then there's only one. Yes, Annabeth said. And he died, like, a gazillion years ago, right? Theseus killed him in the labyrinth. So Percy said. Monsters don't die, Percy. They can be killed. But they don't die, Naruto said. Both of them looked at Naruto, who suddenly appeared from nowhere. They don't have souls. You can dispel them for a while, but they are primal forces, archetypes. Eventually, they reform. Hush, Percy said. I mean, your math teacher. She's still out there, Annabeth said. How did you know about Mrs. Dodds? Percy asked. You talk in your sleep. Percy asked, you almost called her something. A fury. They're Hades' torturers, right? Annabeth glanced nervously at the ground, as if she expected it to open up and swallow her. You shouldn't call them by name, even here. We call them the kindly ones, if we have to speak of them at all. Look, is there anything we can say without thundering? Percy said. And why do I have to stay in cabin 11, anyway? Why is everybody so crowded together? There are plenty of empty bunks right over there. He pointed to the first few cabins. Annabeth turned pale. You don't just choose a cabin, Percy. It depends on who your parents are. Or your parent, she said. My mom is Sally Jackson, Percy said. She works at the candy store in Grand Central Station. At least, she used to. I'm sorry about your mom, Percy. But that's not what I mean. I'm talking about your other parent. Your dad. He's dead. I never knew him. Your father's not dead, Percy, Naruto said. Percy looked confused. What do you mean, Naruto? Your father is God, Naruto said. What? How else would you be allowed here? You're demigod, Percy. How do I know I am a demigod as they are called? Percy asked. Usually demigods are diagnosed with dyslexia and probably ADHD, too, Annabeth said. Percy asked, what about Naruto, he doesn't have ADHD? Annabeth surprised at this. I can answer your question, Naruto said, both looked toward him. First, I am not from this world, and the second is he took his kunai from pocket and cut his thumb. Percy and Annabeth both saw his wound healed in few seconds. This surprised both of them. My healing factor. That's why I don't have ADHD. Anyway, how does ADHD help? Percy asked. ADHD is your battlefield reflexes. In a real fight, they keep you alive. As for the attention problems, that's because you see too much, Percy, not too little. Your senses are better than a regular mortal's. Then there is, Annabeth said. She wanted to say more, but she interrupted by someone very familiar to her and Naruto. Well, a newbie. They looked toward a voice direction. They saw Clarice with her two cabin mate. Clarice, Annabeth sighed. Why don't you go polish your spear or something? Sure, Miss Princess, Clarice said. So I can run you through with it Friday night. Eres Caracas. Annabeth said, which in Greek was go to the crows. You don't stand a chance. We'll pulverize you, Clarice said, but her eye twitched. Perhaps she wasn't sure she could follow through on the threat. She turned toward Naruto. Hello, Clarice, Naruto said. Hello, Naruto, Clarice said in a normal tone. She turned to Percy. Who's this little runt with you? Percy Jackson, Naruto said, meets Clarice, daughter of Ares. Percy blinked. Like the war god. Clarice sneered. You got a problem with that? No, Percy said, recovering my wits. It explains the bad smell. One day he is going to die because of his big mouth, Naruto thought. Clarice growled. We got an initiation ceremony for newbies, Percy. Percy? Whatever. Come on, I'll show you. Clarice Annabeth tried to say. Stay out of it, wise girl. Before Percy does anything, Clarice held him by the neck and started dragging him toward the bathroom. He dropped his minotaur horn. Annabeth picked it up. She turned toward Naruto and asked, Naruto, you. Save it, Percy is not a kid. He can handle himself, Naruto said. And hopefully after that, he will learn to keep his mouth shut. Percy was kicking and punching. But it was useless, Clarice had hands like iron. She dragged him into the girls' bathroom. There was a line of toilets on one side and a line of shower stalls down the other. It smelled just like any public bathroom. Clarice's friends were all laughing, and Percy was trying to find the strength he did use to fight the Minotaur, but it just wasn't there. Like he's big 3 material, Clarice said as she pushed him toward one of the toilets. Yeah, right. Minotaur probably fell over laughing, he was so stupid looking. Her friend snickered. Annabeth and Naruto stood in the corner. Clarice bent Percy over on his knees and started pushing his head toward the toilet bowl. Naruto felt Percy's energy. Well, this is going to be messy, he said. Annabeth asked, what? They heard the plumbing rumble, the pipes shudder. Clarice's grip on Percy's hair loosened. Water shot out of the toilet, making an arc straight over his head, and he sprawled on the bathroom tiles with Clarice was screaming behind him. Percy turned just as water blasted out of the toilet again, hitting Clarice straight in the face so hard it pushed her down onto her butt. She struggled, gasping, and her friends started coming toward her. But then the other toilets exploded too, and 6 more streams of toilet water blasted them back. The showers acted up too, and together all the fixtures sprayed the camouflage girls right out of the bathroom, spinning them around like pieces of garbage being washed away. As soon as they were out the door, the water shut off as quickly as it had started. The entire bathroom flooded. Percy looked toward Annabeth and Naruto. He noticed they were in some kind black transparent dome. They were completely dry. Dome disappeared and Naruto said, "Very nice Percy, the new lord of the bathroom." Percy looked down and realized he was sitting in a dry spot. There was a circle of dry floor around him and he didn't have one drop of water on his clothes. Nothing. Annabeth said, "How did you?" "I don't know." They walked to the door. Outside, Clarice and her friend sprawled in the mud and a bunch of other campers had gathered around to gawk. Clarice's hair flattened across her face. Her camouflage jacket was sopping and she smelled like sewage. She gave Percy a look of absolute hatred. "You're dead, new boy. You're totally dead." Percy said, "You want to gar?" Before Percy could say anything, Naruto puts a hand on his mouth. "Shut up, Percy, you have a big mouth," Naruto said. "Keep it up and you'll get yourself killed." He looked at Clarice. He saw her friends were holding her. "Clarice." She looked at him. "Sleep. Just like Gabe, she fell asleep. Takes her to your cabin. We don't want another mess," he said to her friend. They all nodded and took her toward cabin 5. He removed his hand on Percy's mouth. Percy saw Annabeth stared at both of them. "What?" Percy demanded. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking," she said, "that I want both of you on my team to capture the flag." Word of the bathroom incident spread immediately. Wherever they went, campers pointed at Percy and murmured something about toilet water. Annabeth showed Percy a few more places. The metal shop, where kids were forging their own swords, the arts and crafts room, where satyrs were sandblasting a giant marble statue of a goat man, and the climbing wall, which actually consisted of 2 facing walls that shook violently, dropped boulders, sprayed lava, and clashed together if you didn't get to the top fast enough. Naruto was not with them. When they asked where he was going, he told them he was going for training and then disappeared. Finally both of them returned to the canoeing lake, where the trail led back to the cabins. "I've got training to do," Annabeth said. "Dinner's at 7:30. Just follow your cabin to the mess hall and one more thing, you need to talk to the Oracle." "Who?" Percy asked. "Not who. What? The Oracle. I'll ask Chiron," Annabeth said. Percy stared into the lake, wishing somebody would give him a straight answer for once. He wasn't expecting anybody to be looking back at him from the bottom, so his heart skipped a beat when he noticed 2 teenage girls sitting cross-legged at the base of the pier, about 20 feet below. They wore blue jeans and shimmering green t-shirts, and their brown hair floated loose around their shoulders as minnows darted in and out. They smiled and waved as if he were a long-lost friend. He didn't know what else to do. He waved back. "Don't encourage them," Annabeth warned. "Naiads are terrible flirts." "Naiads," Percy repeated, feeling completely overwhelmed. "That's it. I want to go home." Annabeth frowned. "Don't you get it, Percy? You're home. This is the only safe place on Earth for kids like us." "That's crazy." "What?" "I mean, I'm demigod, it's just impossible, but it is true, Percy. What's the most common thing gods did in the old stories? They ran around falling in love with humans and having kids with them. Do you think they've changed their habits in the last few millennia?" "But those are just," Percy almost said myths again. Then he remembered Chiron's warning. "But if all the kids here are half-gods?" "Demigods," Annabeth said. "That's the official term. Or half-bloods." "Then who's your dad?" Annabeth's hands tightened around the pier railing. "My dad is a professor at West Point," she said. "I haven't seen him since I was very small. He teaches American history. He's human." "What? You assume it has to be a male god who finds a human female attractive? How sexist is that?" "Who's your mom, then?" "Haben 6. "Meaning?" Annabeth straightened. "Athena, goddess of wisdom and battle." "Okay," Percy thought. "Why not?" "And my dad?" he asked. "Undetermined," Annabeth said, "like I told you before. Nobody knows. Except my mother. She knew." "Maybe not, Percy. Gods don't always reveal their identities." "My dad would have. He loved her." Annabeth gave me a cautious look. "Maybe you're right. Maybe he'll send a sign. That's the only way to know. Your father has to send you a sign claiming you as his son. Sometimes it happens." "You mean sometimes it doesn't?" Annabeth ran her palm along the rail. "The gods are busy. They have a lot of kids and they don't always, well, sometimes they don't care about us, Percy. They ignore us." Percy thought about some of the kids he did see in the Hermes cabin, teenagers who looked sullen and depressed, as if they were waiting for a call that would never come. "So I'm stuck here," Percy said. "That's it. For the rest of my life." "It depends," Annabeth said. "Some campers only stay the summer. If you're a child of Aphrodite or Demeter, you're probably not a real powerful force. The monsters might ignore you, so you can get by with a few months of summer training and live in the mortal world the rest of the year. But for some of us, it's too dangerous to leave. We're year-rounders. In the mortal world, we attract monsters. They sense us. They come to challenge us. Most of the time, they'll ignore us until we're old enough to cause trouble, about 10 or 11 years old, but after that, most demigods either make their way here or they get killed off. A few manage to survive in the outside world and become famous. Believe me, if I told you the names, you'd know them. Some don't even realize they're demigods. But very, very few are like that." "What do you think, who is Naruto's dad?" Percy asked. "Naruto is powerful. His dad must be part of Big Three," Annabeth said. "But this will be not good for him." "Why?" "Children of Big Three are always more powerful than other half-blood. They always attract a powerful monster." "About monsters, they can't get in here." Annabeth shook her head. "Not unless they're intentionally stalked in the woods or specially summoned by somebody on the inside. Why would anybody want to summon a monster?" "Practice fights." "Practical jokes," someone said from behind him. What?" Percy moved from his spot. He saw it was Naruto. "Don't do that, and what do you mean practical jokes?" "Hit me," before Naruto could say anything. Annabeth stopped him. "Naruto, you can explain him that later," Annabeth said. She looked at Percy. "The borders are sealed to keep mortals and monsters out. From the outside, mortals look into the valley and see nothing unusual, just a strawberry farm." "Because of that big pine tree," Naruto said. Annabeth shocked, she asked, "How did you know that?" "My eyes can see the shield that made by the tree," Naruto said. Annabeth somehow relaxed. "So you're a year-rounder?" Percy asked her. Annabeth nodded. From under the collar of her t-shirt, she pulled a leather necklace with 5 clay beads of different colors. It was just like Luke's, except Annabeth's also had a big gold ring strung on it, like a college ring. "I've been here since I was 7, she said. "Every August, on the last day of summer session, both of you gets a bead for surviving another year. I've been here longer than most of the counselors, and they're all in college." "Why did you come so young?" Annabeth twisted the ring on her necklace. "None of your business," she said. "Percy," Naruto said. "You can't question others about their personal life." Annabeth gave him a grateful look. "Oh, sorry," Percy said. He stood there for a minute in uncomfortable silence. "So I could just walk out of here right now if I wanted to?" "It would be suicide, but you could, with Mr. T's or Chiron's permission. But they wouldn't give permission until the end of the summer session unless you were granted a quest. But that hardly ever happens." The last time, her voice trailed off. Both Naruto and Percy could tell from her tone that the last time hadn't gone well. "Back in the sick room," Percy said, "when you were feeding me that stuff. Ambrosia." "Yeah, you asked me something about the summer solstice." Annabeth's shoulders tensed. "So you do know something?" "Well, no. Back at my old school, me and Naruto overheard Grover and Chiron talks about it. Grover mentioned the summer solstice. He said something like we didn't have much time because of the deadline." "What did that mean?" Annabeth clenched her fists. "I wish I knew. Chiron and the satyrs, they know, but they won't tell me. Something is wrong with Olympus, something pretty major. Last time I was there, everything seemed so normal." "You've been to Olympus?" "Some of us year-rounders, Luke and Clarice and I and a few others, we took a field trip during winter solstice. That's when the gods have their big annual council." "How did you get there?" Naruto asked. Annabeth said, "The Long Island Railroad, of course. You get off at Penn Station. Empire State Building, special elevator to the 600th floor." Naruto nodded. "If there are 60 floors in the Empire State Building, then it has been hidden by illusion, or it must in a parallel dimension," he thought. Annabeth looked at Percy like she was sure he must know this already. "You are a New Yorker, right?" "Oh, sure," Percy said. "As I knew, there were only 102 floors in the Empire State Building," he thought. "Right after we visited," Annabeth continued, "the weather got weird, as if the gods had started fighting. A couple of times since, I've overheard satyrs talking. The best I can figure out is that something important was stolen. And if it isn't returned by the summer solstice, there's going to be trouble. When you two came, I was hoping. I mean, Athena can get along with just about anybody, except for Ares. And of course she's got the rivalry with Poseidon. But, I mean, aside from that, I thought we could work together. I thought you might know something." Percy shook his head. "I've got to get a quest," Annabeth muttered to herself. "I'm not too young. If they would just tell me the problem." "Interesting, it must be important if all gods are fighting over it," Naruto thought. In cabin 11 everybody was talking and horsing around, waiting for dinner. For the first time, Percy noticed that a lot of the campers had similar features. Sharp noses, upturned eyebrows, mischievous smiles. They were the kind of kids that teachers would peg as troublemakers. Nobody paid much attention to him as he walked over to his spot on the floor and plopped down with his minotaur horn. The counselor, Luke, came over. He had the Hermes family resemblance, too. It marred by that scar on his right cheek, but his smile was intact. "Found you a sleeping bag," he said. "And here, I stole you some toiletries from the camp store." Percy raised an eyebrow in the stealing part. "Thanks," he said. "No prob." Luke sat next to him, pushed his back against the wall. "Tough first day. But unlike you, it seems that Naruto doesn't have any problem. It's Naruto for you. He is smart and powerful. As for me, I don't belong here," Percy said. "I don't even believe in gods." "Yeah," Luke said. "That's how we all started. Once you start believing in them, it doesn't get any easier." The bitterness in his voice surprised Percy because Luke seemed like a pretty easygoing guy. He looked like he could handle just about anything. "I am just curious how Naruto is powerful. Even the big three children are not that powerful," Luke said. "He is from another world, a land called the Elemental Countries," Percy said. He told him about Naruto. "Wow," Luke said. After a little minute silence, Percy asked, "So your dad is Hermes?" Luke pulled a switchblade out of his back pocket and for a second Percy thought he was going to gut him, but he just scraped the mud off the sole of his sandal. "Yeah. Hermes. The wing-footed messenger guy. That's him. Messengers. Medicine. Travelers, merchants, thieves. Anybody who uses the roads. That's why you're here, enjoying cabin 11's hospitality. Hermes isn't picky about who he sponsors." "You ever meet your dad?" Percy asked. "Once." Percy waited, thinking that if he wanted to tell him more. Apparently, he didn't. Luke looked up and managed a smile. "Don't worry about it, Percy. The campers here, they're mostly good people. After all, we've extended family, right? We take care of each other." Percy was grateful about him. He decided to ask him his last big question, the one that had been bothering him all afternoon. "Clarice, from Ares, was joking about me being Big 3 material. Then Annabeth twice, she said I might be the one. She said I should talk to the Oracle. What was that all about?" Luke folded his knife. "I hate prophecies." "What do you mean?" Luke's face twitched around the scar. "Let's just say I messed things up for everybody else. The last 2 years, ever since my trip to the Garden of the Hesperides went sour, Chiron hasn't allowed any more quests. Annabeth's been dying to get out into the world. She pestered Chiron so much he finally told her he already knew her fate. He'd had a prophecy from the Oracle. He wouldn't tell her the whole thing, but he said Annabeth wasn't destined to go on a quest yet. She had to wait until somebody special came to the camp. Somebody special. Like Naruto. "Don't worry about it, kid," Luke said. "I don't know about Naruto. But Annabeth wants to think every new camper who comes through here is the omen she's been waiting for. Now, come on, it's dinner time and where is Naruto?" "No clue." Both Luke and Percy didn't see Black Raven, who had watching them. They heard a horn blowing in the distance. Luke yelled, "11 fall in." The whole cabin 11, about 20 of children, filed into the common yard. They lined up in order of seniority, so of course Percy was dead last. Pampers came from the other cabins too, except for the 3 empty cabins at the end and cabin 8, which had looked normal in the daytime, but was now starting to glow silver as the sun went down. They marched up the hill to the mess hall pavilion. Satyrs joined them from the meadow. Naiads emerged from the canoeing lake. A few other girls came out of the woods straight out of the woods. Percy saw one girl, about 9 or 10 years old, melts from the side of a maple tree and comes skipping up the hill. In all, there were maybe 100 campers, a few dozen satyrs, and a dozen assorted wood nymphs and naiads. At the pavilion, torches blazed around the marble columns. A central fire burned in a bronze brazier the size of a bathtub. Each cabin had its own table, covered in white cloth trimmed in purple. 4 of the tables were empty, but cabin 11's was way overcrowded. Percy saw Naruto was already there. "You're late, Percy," Naruto said. He gave the Percy seat next to him. Percy saw Grover was sitting at table 12 with Mr. D, a few satyrs, and a couple of plump blonde boys who looked just like Mr. D. Chiron stood to one side, the picnic table being way too small for a centaur. Annabeth sat at table 6 with a bunch of serious-looking athletic kids, all with her gray eyes and honey blonde hair. Clara sat behind him at Ares's table. She'd apparently gotten over being hosed down because she was laughing and belching right along her friends. Finally, Chiron pounded his hoof against the marble floor of the pavilion and everybody fell silent. He raised a glass. "To the gods." Everybody else raised their glasses. "To the gods." Wood nymphs came forward with platters of food. Grapes, apples, strawberries, cheese, fresh bread, and barbecue. Naruto and Percy saw their glass was empty. Luke said, "Speak to it. Whatever you want, non-alcoholic, of course." "Black grape juice," Naruto said. His glass filled with dark purple-colored liquid. Percy saw this. Looking at his empty glass, he said, "Blue cherry coke." The glass filled with sparkling violent liquid. He took a cautious sip. "Perfect, like I drank a toast to my mother. She's not gone," he thought. "Not permanently, she's in the underworld. And if that's a real place, then someday." "Here you go, Percy, Naruto," Luke said, handing both of them a platter of smoked brisket. Both of them loaded their plates. Percy was about to take a big bite when they noticed everybody getting up, carrying their plates toward the fire in the center of the pavilion. "Come on," Luke told them. When they got closer, they saw that everyone was taking a portion of their meal and dropping it into the fire, the ripe strawberry, the juiciest slice of beef, the warmest, most buttery roll. Luke said, "Burnt offerings for the gods. They like the smell." "You're kidding," Percy gave him a deadpan expression. While Naruto raised his earbow. Luke approached the fire, bowed his head, and tossed in a cluster of fat red grapes. "Hermes." Percy was next. "I wished I knew what god's name to say," he thought. He made a silent plea. "Whoever you are, tell me, please." He scraped a big slice of brisket into the flames. When he caught a whiff of the smoke, it smelled nothing like burning food. It smelled of hot chocolate and fresh-baked brownies, hamburgers on the grill and wildflowers, and 100 other good things that shouldn't have gone well together, but did. Next was Naruto. He throws some his food into flame. Then the smell of sake, chocolate, porky and many good things filled with air. Then suddenly the fire turned pitch black like Amaterasu for a few seconds before turning back normal. Many people saw that, but they didn't say anything. When everybody had returned to their seats and finished eating their meals, Chiron pounded his hoof again for our attention. Mr. D got up with a huge sigh. "Yes, I suppose I'd better say hello to all you brats." "Well, hello. Our activities director, Chiron, says the next capture the flag is Friday. Cabin 5 presently holds the laurels." A bunch of ugly cheering rose from the Aries table. "Personally," Mr. D continued, "I couldn't care less, but congratulations. Also, I should tell you that we have a 2 new camper today. Peter Johnson." Chiron murmured something to him. Percy Jackson," Mr. D corrected. "And Naruto Uchiha. Now run along to your silly campfire. Go on." Everybody cheered. They all headed down toward the amphitheater, where Apollo's cabin led a sing-along. They sang camp songs about the gods and ate s'mores and joked around, and the funny thing was, Percy didn't feel that anyone was staring at him anymore. He felt that he was home. "Naruto, I feel like I am home," Percy said to Naruto, but he saw he was not with him. Like always, he is not here, Percy thought. From distance, Naruto was watching whole camp. "So did you really don't know about my father, Karasu-chan?" Naruto asked his raven that was standing on his left shoulder. "No, Master Naruto, Master Hitomi never told me about him," Karasu said. "I believe in you." Naruto looked toward camp. "What do you think about this? If your father is God, then this is going to be interesting." Naruto and Karasu both looked at Campers, who was singing Camp's song. The next few days both Naruto and Percy settled into a routine that felt almost normal. They were getting lessons from satyrs, nymphs, and a centaur. Each morning Percy took ancient Greek from Annabeth and Naruto was there to help her. They talked about the gods and goddesses in the present tense, which was kind of weird to Percy. Percy discovered Annabeth was right about his dyslexia. Ancient Greek wasn't that hard for him to read. At least, it was not harder than English. The rest of the day, they rotate through outdoor activities, looking for something they were good at. Chiron tried to teach Percy archery, but they found out pretty quick that he wasn't any good with a bow and arrow. Foot racing? No good either. The wood nymph instructors left him in the dust. They told him not to worry about it. They'd had centuries of practice running away from lovesick gods. But still, it was a little humiliating to be slower than a tree. And wrestling? Forget it. Every time he got on the mat, Clarice would always pulverize him. The only thing he really excelled at was canoeing, and that wasn't the kind of heroic skill people expected to see from the kid who had fought with the Minotaur. As for Naruto, he was the exact opposite of Percy. Just like school, he was good at all the things. According to Chiron, he was excellent with bows and arrows. In foot racing, he was too fast for his opponent. In wrestling, he threw his opponent out of the ring in his first try. Soon they found Naruto was excellent in using all kinds of weapon. He was best, as people had expected from the kid who had killed the Minotaur. Both of them knew the senior campers and counselors were watching them, trying to figure out who their parent or parents was, but they weren't having an easy time of it. "Don't be sad, Percy. You are doing well," Naruto said. "Naruto, I saw you. You are best, just like you were doing in school," and Percy said sadly. "Percy, you can't compare me to you. I am learning the fight from my age 5. I have a real-life fighting experience." "Sorry. No problem. What's your next schedule? I had my first sword fighting lesson. Good luck, Naruto said, and he disappeared from there. Everybody from cabin 11 except Naruto gathered in the big circular arena where Luke was instructor. They started with basic stabbing and slashing, using some straw stuffed dummies in Greek armor. Percy was doing okay. At least, he understood what he's supposed to do and his reflexes were good. The problem was he couldn't find a blade that felt right in his hands. Either they were too heavy, or too light, or too long. Luke tried his best to fix his problem, but he agreed that none of the practice blades seemed to work for him. They moved on to dueling in pairs. Luke announced he would be Percy's partner, since this was his first time. Good luck, one of the campers told Percy. Luke was the best swordsman in the last 300 years. Was? Percy asked. 2 days ago, your friend Naruto easily defeated him. Flashback starts. Luke was attacking Naruto with a sword. He tried to hit him, but it was blocked. Clash. Others heard the sound of Naruto and Luke's swords hitting each other from away. Again Luke dashed toward Naruto. Naruto dodged the sword slash with one side step. Luke's eyes widened how quick Naruto dodged his attack. But it was too late, Naruto stuck his foot out and Luke tripped over it. Naruto snatched Luke's sword and held it in Luke's throat. Flashback ends. That's why Naruto is not here, Percy said. Yes, because not only he won the first round of the match, but also won 3 straight rounds. Maybe he'll go easy on me, Percy said. The camper snorted. Luke showed Percy thrusts and parries and shield blocks the hard way. With every swipe, Percy got a little more battered and bruised. Keep your guard up, Percy, Luke said. He whapped him in the ribs with the flat of his blade. No, not that far up. Whap. Lunge. Whap. Now, back. Whap. By the time Luke called a break, Percy soaked in sweat. Everybody swarmed the drinks cooler. Luke poured ice water on his head, which looked like such a good idea to Percy. He did the same. Instantly, he felt better. Okay, everybody circle up. Luke ordered. If Percy doesn't mind, I want to give you a little demo. Great, Percy thought. Let's all watch Percy gets pounded. The Hermes guys gathered around. They were suppressing smiles. Luke told everybody he was going to prove a disarming technique. How to twist the enemy's blade with the flat of your own sword so that he had no choice but to drop his weapon. This is difficult, Luke stressed. I've had it used against me. No laughing at Percy, now. Most swordsmen have to work years to master this technique. He demonstrated the move on Percy in slow motion. Sure enough, the sword clattered out of his hand. Now in real time, Luke said, after Percy retrieved his weapon. We keep sparring until one of us pulls it off. Ready, Percy? Percy nodded, and Luke came after him. Somehow, Percy kept Luke from getting a shot at the hilt of his sword. Percy's senses opened up. He saw Luke's attacks coming. He countered. He stepped forward and tried a thrust of his own. Luke deflected it easily, but he saw a change in his face. His eyes narrowed, and he started to press him with more force. The sword grew heavy in Percy's hand. The balance wasn't right. He knew it was only a matter of seconds before Luke took him down. Then Percy's blade hit the base of Luke's, and he twisted it, putting his whole weight into a down thrust. Clang. Luke's sword rattled against the stones. The tip of his blade was an inch from his undefended chest. The other campers were silent. Percy lowered his sword. Sorry. For a moment, Luke was too stunned to speak. Sorry. His scarred face broke into a grin. By the gods, Percy, why are you sorry? Show me that again. Next time, there was no contest. The moment their swords connected, Luke hit Percy's sword's hilt and sent his weapon skidding across the floor. After a long pause, somebody in the audience said, beginner's luck. Luke wiped the sweat off his brow. He appraised at Percy with an entirely new interest. Maybe, he said. But I wonder what Percy could do with a balanced sword. Friday afternoon, Percy was sitting with Grover and Naruto at the lake, resting from a near-death experience on the climbing wall. Grover and Naruto had scampered to the top without a scratch, but the lava had almost gotten him. His shirt had smoking holes in it. The hairs had been singed off his forearms. They sat on the pier, watching the naiads do underwater. Percy asked Grover how your conversation had gone with Mr. D. Grover's face turned a sickly shade of yellow. Fine, he said. Just great. So your career is still on track? Naruto asked. He glanced at Naruto and Percy nervously. Chiron T told you I want a searcher's license. Well, no, Percy said. He just said you had big plans, you know, and that you needed credit for completing a keeper's assignment. So did you get it? Grover looked down at the naiads. Mr. D suspended judgment. He said I hadn't failed or succeeded with you two. Yet, so our fates were still tied together. If any of you got a quest and I went along to protect one of you and we both came back alive, then maybe he'd consider the job complete. Percy's spirits lifted. He said, well, that's not so bad, right? Blah ha ha. He might as well have transferred me to stable cleaning duty. The chances of you getting a quest, and even if you did, why would you want me along? Of course I'd want you along. Percy said. Grover stared glumly into the water. Basket weaving must be nice to have a useful skill. Percy tried to reassure Grover that he had lots of talents, but that just made him look more miserable. If you want to succeed, stop thinking that people's opinion is important. If you believe in yourself, then people will be forced to believe in you, Naruto said. Grover's spirits lifted and he nodded. Then they talked about canoeing and swordplay for a while, then debated the pros and cons of the different gods. Finally, Percy asked Grover about the 4 empty cabins. Number 8, the silver one, belongs to Artemis, Grover said. She vowed to be a maiden forever. So of course, no kids. The cabin is, you know, honorary. If she didn't have one, she'd be mad. Yeah, okay. But the other 3, the ones at the end. Are those the big 3? Percy asked. Grover tensed. No. One of them, number 2, is Hera's, he said. That's another honorary thing. She's the goddess of marriage, so of course she wouldn't go around having affairs with mortals. That's her husband's job. When we say the big 3, we mean the 3 powerful brothers, the sons of Croons. Zeus, Poseidon, Hades, Naruto said. Grover nodded, right. You know. After the great battle with the Titans, they took over the world from their dad and drew lots to decide who got what. Zeus got the sky, Naruto said, Poseidon the sea, Hades the underworld. Aha. But Hades doesn't have a cabin here. No. He doesn't have a throne on Olympus, either. He sort of does his own thing down in the underworld. If he did have a cabin here, Grover shuddered. Well, it wouldn't be pleasant. Let's leave it at that. Percy asked, but Zeus and Poseidon, they both had, like, a bazillion kids in the myths. Why are their cabins empty? Grover shifted his hooves uncomfortably and Naruto answered Percy's question. About 60 years ago, after World War II, the big 3 agreed they wouldn't sire any more heroes. Their children were just too powerful. They were affecting the course of human events too much, causing too much carnage. World War II, you know, that was basically a fight between the sons of Zeus and Poseidon on one side and the sons of Hades on the other. The winning side, Zeus and Poseidon, made Hades swear an oath by them. No more affairs with mortal women. They all swore on the river Styx. Grover surprised. How do you know that? He asked Naruto. Jiren told me. Percy said, that's the most serious oath you can make. Grover nodded. And the brothers kept their word, no kids. Grover's face darkened. 17 years ago, Zeus fell off the wagon. There was this TV starlet with a big fluffy 80s hairdo, he just couldn't help himself. When their child was born, a little girl named Thalia, well, the river Styx is serious about the promises. Zeus himself got off easy because he's immortal, but he brought a terrible fate on his daughter. But that isn't fair. It wasn't the little girl's fault. Grover hesitated. Percy, children of the big 3 have powers greater than other half-bloods. They have a strong aura, a scent that attracts monsters. When Hades found out about the girl, he wasn't too happy about Zeus breaking his oath. Hades let the worst monsters out of Tartarus to torment Thalia. A satyr was assigned to be her keeper when she was 12, but there was nothing he could do. He tried to escort her here with a couple of other half-bloods she'd befriended. They almost made it. They got all the way to the top of that hill. He pointed across the valley to the pine tree where they fought the Minotaur. All 3 kindly ones were after them, along with a horde of hellhounds. They were about to be overrun when Thalia told her satyr to take the other 2 half-bloods to safety while she held off the monsters. She was wounded and tired, and she didn't want to live like a hunted animal. The satyr didn't want to leave her, but he couldn't change her mind and he had to protect the others. So Thalia made her final stand alone at the top of that hill. As she died, Zeus took pity on her. He turned her into that pine tree. Her spirit still helps protect the borders of the valley. That's why the hill is called Half-Blood Hill. Yes, but she is lonely and sad. Looking at Pine Tree Naruto though. Percy stared at the pine in the distance. The story made him feel hollow and guilty. A girl his age had sacrificed herself to save her friends. She had faced a whole army of monsters. Next to that, he's fighting with the Minotaur didn't seem like much. Percy wondered, if I'd acted differently, could I have saved my mother? Grover, he said, has heroes really gone on quests to the underworld? Sometimes, Grover said. Orpheus. Hercules. Houdini. And have they ever returned somebody from the dead? No. Never. Orpheus came close. Percy, you're not seriously thinking. No, Percy lied. I was just wondering. So a satyr is always assigned to guard a demigod. Grover studied Percy warily. Percy hadn't persuaded him that he had really dropped the underworld idea, for now. Not always. We go undercover to a lot of schools. We try to sniff out the half-bloods who have the makings of great heroes. If we find one with a very strong aura, like a child of the big 3, we alert Chiron. He tries to keep an eye on them since they could cause really huge problems. And you found me and Naruto, Chiron said you thought we might be something special. Grover looked as if Percy had just led him into a trap. I didn't. Oh, listen, don't think like that. If you were, you know you'd never ever be allowed a quest and I'd never get my license. You're probably a child of Hermes. Or maybe even one of the minor gods, like Nemesis, the god of revenge. Don't worry, okay? What about Naruto, Grover? Percy asked. About Naruto, well, Grover noticed Naruto was not with them. Where is he? I thought he was with us. He asked. They looked around. Both of them saw Chiron and Annabeth coming toward them. Well, hello Percy, Grover, Chiron said. Do you know where Naruto is? Few minutes ago, he was with us, Grover said. Can you help us to find him? Chiron said. Why? Percy asked. Naruto has great knowledge of herb and he also knows medical technique. We will need them after capture the flag game, Annabeth said. Grover said in surprised tone, Naruto is also doctor. You can say that, Chiron said. Percy said, well, every day, you can learn more about him. Both of them agreed to find Naruto. They soon found him lakeside. They all had shocked what they were seeing. Percy said, is he standing? On top of the water. Grover completed. And he is fighting with himself. Annabeth said. Front of them was Naruto. Both of them were fighting with each other. Suddenly both Naruto disappeared and appeared on the middle of the lake, throwing punches and kicks at each other at great speed. Then they vanished again. I can't see them. They are moving so fast, Percy said. They appeared again and punched each other's fists, which create a shockwave. Whoa, they are powerful. Grover said. Both Naruto moved from each other and started making some hand sign. They both shouted at the same time. Water release. Water dragon bullet technique, Suiton. Shuriken no Jutsu, first Naruto shouted and large amount of water rose from the lake and it took a shape of giant powerful dragon. High release. Fire dragon flame bullet, Kaiten. Karakenden, second Naruto shouted. He took a deep breath and exhaled a long stream of incredibly hot fire from the mouth, which took the form of large dragon. Both dragons charged each other and they collided at the same time. Boom. That sent shockwave in the whole lake. Percy, Annabeth, Grover and Chiron looked toward the lake and found they can't see anything because of water vapor. A few minutes later, vapor disappeared. They saw both Naruto were perfectly fine. They don't have any scratch on them. That was Percy said. Grover said, incredible. Amazing, Annabeth said with stars in her eyes. He has ability to manipulate fire and water both. Chiron thought. Suddenly, both Naruto disappeared and reappeared front of them. They saw both Naruto and noticed second Naruto's eyes, they were red slit with black background. Chiron saw second Naruto. He has an aura of pure evil he thought. Second Naruto smirked evilly at them, making chills run down their spine. Then he melted into first Naruto's shadow. Who was he? Annabeth asked, with fear in her voice. Suddenly all heard a loud thud. They saw unconscious Grover on the ground. Naruto's sweat dropped. He is Yami Naruto, it is my inner darkness in my heart. Inner darkness? Percy asked. It means your dark thought, your desire, your anger etc., Chiron said. Huh? It means your dark half, Annabeth said. Percy nodded, that's why you had tried to kill him. He said to Naruto. Naruto said, you can't kill your darkness. Why? Because it's part of you. You can only accept it. It only way, Percy. He is right, Percy, Chiron said. Darkness is equally part of our life. You can't deny it. So why you all are here? Naruto asked. Annabeth explained him about the medical need after the game. You want my help? Naruto asked. Chiron and Annabeth nodded. Okay, and I think I have already got my first patient. He looked at unconscious Grover. Other sweat dropped at this. That night after dinner, there was a lot more excitement than usual. It was time to capture the flag. When the plates cleared away, the conch horn sounded and all stood at our tables. Campers yelled and cheered as Annabeth and two of her siblings ran into the pavilion carrying a silk banner. It was about 10 feet long, glistening gray, with a painting of a barn owl above an olive tree. From the opposite side of the pavilion, Clarice and her buddies ran in with another banner, of same size, but gaudy red, painted with a bloody spear and a boar's head. Percy turned to Luke and yelled because of notice. Those are the flags. Yeah. Ares and Athena always lead the teams. Not always, he said. But often. So, if another cabin captures one, what do you do? Repaint the flag. He grinned. You'll see. First we have to get one. Whose side are we on? He gave me a sly look, as if he knew something I didn't. The scar on his face made him look almost evil in the torchlight. We've made a temporary alliance with Athena. Tonight, we get the flag from Ares. And you are going to help. What about Naruto? He said he doesn't want to play. But after the game, he is providing us medical treatment. I always thought Naruto is great warrior. But I never thought he is also a doctor. The teams were announced. Athena had made an alliance with Apollo and Hermes, the two biggest cabins. Apparently, privileges had been traded, shower times, chore schedules, the best slots for activities in order to win support. Ares had allied themselves with everybody else. Dionysus, Demeter, Aphrodite, and Hephaestus. Dionysus's kids were actually good athletes, but there were only two of them. Demeter's kids had the edge with nature skills and outdoor stuff, but they weren't very aggressive. Aphrodite's sons and daughters they weren't too worried about. They mostly sat out every activity and checked their reflections in the lake and did their hair and gossiped. Hephaestus's kids weren't pretty, and there were only 4 of them, but they were big and burly from working in the metal shop all day. That, of course, left Ares' cabin. A dozen of the big kids. Chiron hammered his hoof on the marble. "Heroes," he announced. "You know the rules. The creek is the boundary line. The entire forest is fair game. All magic items are allowed. The banner must be prominently displayed and have no more than 2 guards. Prisoners may be disarmed but may not be bound or gagged. No killing or maiming is allowed. I will serve as referee and battlefield medic. Arm yourselves." He spread his hands, and the tables were suddenly covered with equipment. Helmets, bronze swords, spear, oxide shields coated in metal. "Whoa," Percy said. "We're really supposed to use these?" Luke looked at me as if he were crazy. "Unless you want to get skewered by your friends in cabin 5. Here, Chiron thought these would fit. You'll be on border patrol." Percy's shield was the size of an NBA backboard, with a big caduceus in the middle. It weighed about 1,000,000 pounds. I hope nobody seriously expected me to run fast, Percy thought. His helmet, like all the helmets on Athena's side, had a blue horsehair plume on top. Ares and their allies had red plumes. Annabeth yelled, "Blue team, forward." All cheered and shook their swords and followed her down the path to the south woods. The red team yelled taunts at them as they headed off toward the north. Percy managed to catch up with Annabeth without tripping over his equipment. "Hey." She kept marching. "So what's the plan?" he asked. "Got any magic items you can loan me?" "Just watch Clarissa's spear," Annabeth said. "You don't want that thing touching you. Otherwise, don't worry. We'll take the banner from Ares. Has Luke given you your job?" "Border patrol, whatever that means." "It's easy. Stand by the creek, keep the Reds away. Leave the rest to me. Athena always has a plan." Annabeth pushed ahead, leaving Percy in the dust. "Okay," Percy mumbled. "Glad you wanted me on your team." From long distance, Chiron and Mr. D were waiting for something will happen. Mr. D was sitting on a chair while Chiron was just standing there. "Are you waiting for something will happen?" Naruto asked. He appeared there with the swirling of the vortex. "Welcome, Naruto," Chiron greeted him. "Yes, I wish something interesting would happen," Mr. D said. "Why you are here? I thought you liked the challenge." "This children's game, who doesn't know what is war," Naruto said. Mr. D said, "I completely agree with you." Then he turned toward Chiron. "It's good to know, at least one half-blood has brain." "Yes, Mr. D," Chiron said. Naruto asked Mr. D, "So why you are sitting here? You are God. You can use your power to see what is happening in game." "Why restrictions?" "Oh, let me help you," Naruto said, as suddenly wooden pole rose from the ground in front of Mr. D. That surprised Mr. D and Chiron. "Okay, last time I checked, I am not your father," Mr. D said. "Was Hashirama Senju your son?" Mr. D shook his head negatively. "Well, I thought he was your son, but he had the power to control tree. In the last battle with him, my grandfather had acquired some power. I got this power from him." "Interesting, but how does this wooden pole help us?" "This is only for puff of smoke." Crystal ball appeared in Naruto's hand. This. "What is this?" "It is a tool for telescope technique," Naruto said. He put a crystal on the wooden pole. "Today, blue team will win." "Why not red? They have a war god cabin with them?" Mr. D asked. "If you know your enemies and know yourself, you will not be imperiled in 100 battles, and the blue team knows their enemy. They have a plan," Naruto said, as Percy's image appeared in the crystal ball. With Percy. It was a warm, sticky night. The woods were dark, with fireflies popping in and out of view. Annabeth stationed Percy next to a little creek that gurgled over some rocks, then she and the rest of the team scattered into the trees. Standing there alone, with big blue feathered helmet and huge shield, Percy felt like an idiot. There was no way anybody would actually attack me, would they? I mean, Olympus had to have liability issues, right? He thought. Percy heard far away, the conch horn blew. Then he heard whoops and yells in the woods, the clanking of metal, kids fighting. A blue-plumed ally from Apollo raced past him like a deer, leaped through the creek, and disappeared into enemy territory. Great, Percy thought. I'll miss all the fun, as usual. Then he heard a sound that sent a chill up his spine, a low canine growl, somewhere close by. Percy raised his shield instinctively, he had the feeling something was stalking him. Then the growling stopped. He felt the presence retreating. Suddenly, 5 Ares warriors came yelling and screaming out of the dark. "Cream the punk!" Clara screamed. Her eyes glared through the slits of her helmet. She brandished a 5-foot-long spear, its barbed metal tip flickering with red light. Her siblings had only the standard-issue bronze swords. They charged across the stream. There was no help in sight. Percy could run. Or he could defend himself against half the Ares cabin. Percy managed to sidestep the first kid's swing. They surrounded him, and Clarice thrust at him with her spear. His shield deflected the point, but he felt a painful tingling all over his body. His hair stood on end. His shield arm went numb, and the air burned. Her spear was electric. He fell back. Another Ares guy slammed him in the chest with the butt of his sword, and he hit the dirt. They started laughing. "Give him a haircut," Clara said. "Grab his hair." Percy managed to get to his feet. He raised his sword, but Clara slammed it aside with her spear as sparks flew. Now both his arms felt numb. "Oh, wow," Clara said. "I'm scared of this guy. Really scared." "The flag is that way," Percy managed to say. "Yeah," one of Clarice's siblings said. "But see, we don't care about the flag. We care about a guy who made our cabin look stupid." "You do that without my help," Percy told them. "But Naruto." Naruto saw Percy open his big mouth again. "Idiot," Naruto said. His need to learn to keep his big mouth shut. Mr. D and Chiron nodded. They saw Clara stuck her spear in Percy's ribs and one of her cabin mates slashed his sword across his arm, leaving a good size a cut. "They are taking this too far," Chiron said, as he saw they pushed Percy into water. "This is going to be interesting," Mr. D said. "Yes," Naruto said. Chiron's sweat dropped when he saw both of them were eating popcorn. "Chiron goes there, this game will end soon," Mr. D said. Chiron nodded and left. Back to Percy. Clarice and her cabin mates came into the creek to get Percy, but he stood to meet them. Somehow, Percy knew what to do. He swung the flat of his sword against the first guy's head and knocked his helmet clean off. He hit him so hard and he crumpled into the water. Number 2 and number 3 came at Percy. He slammed one in the face with his shield and used his sword to shear off the other guy's horsehair plume. Both of them backed up quickly. Number 4 didn't look really anxious to attack, but Clarice kept coming, the point of her spear crackling with energy. As soon as she thrust, Percy caught the shaft between the edge of his shield and his sword, and he snapped it like a twig. "Ah!" Clarice screamed. "You idiot. You corpse breath worm." She probably would have said worse, but Percy smacked her between the eyes with his sword butt and sent her stumbling backward out of the creek. Then Percy heard yelling, elated screams, and he saw Luke racing toward the boundary line, with the red team's banner lifted high. He flanked by a couple of Hermes guys covering his retreat and a few from Apollo behind them, fighting off the Hephaestus kids. The Ares folks got up and Clarice muttered a dazed curse. "A trick," she shouted. It was a trick. They staggered after Luke, but it was too late. Everybody converged on the creek as Luke ran across into friendly territory. Other side exploded into cheers. The red banner shimmered and turned to silver. The boar and spear replaced with a huge caduceus, the symbol of Cabin 11. Everybody on the blue team picked up Luke and started carrying him around on their shoulders. Chiron cantered out from the woods and blew the conch horn. The game was over. We'd won, Percy thought. He was about to join the celebration when Annabeth's voice, right next to him in the creek, said, "Not bad, hero." Percy looked, but she wasn't there. "Where the heck did you learn to fight like that?" she asked. The air shimmered and she materialized front of him, holding a Yankees baseball cap as if she'd just taken it off her head. Percy realized something. "You set me up," he said angrily. "You put me here because you knew Clarice would come after me, well you sent Luke around the flank. You had it all figured out." Annabeth shrugged. "I told you. Athena always has a plan. The plan to get me pulverized. I came as fast as I could. I was about to jump in, but Annabeth said. You didn't need help." Then she noticed his wounded arm. "How did you do that?" "Sword cut," Percy said. "What do you think?" "No. It was a sword cut. Look at it." The blood was gone. Where the huge cut had been, there was a long white scratch, and even that was fading. As he watched, it turned into a small scar and disappeared. I don't get it," Percy said. Annabeth was thinking hard. She looked down at his feet, then at Clarice's broken spear and said, "Step out of the water, Percy." "What?" "Just do it." Percy came out of the creek and immediately felt bone tired. His arms started to go numb again. He almost fell over, but Annabeth steadied him. "Oh, sticks," Annabeth cursed. "This is not good. I didn't want, I assumed it would be Zeus." Before Percy could ask what she meant, he heard that canine growl again, but much closer than before. A howl ripped through the forest. The campers' cheering died instantly. Annabeth drew her sword. There on the rocks just above them was a black hound the size of a rhino, with lava-red eyes and fangs like daggers. It was looking straight at Percy. Nobody moved except Annabeth, who yelled, "Percy, run." She tried to step in front of him, but the hound was too fast. It leaped over her, an enormous shadow with teeth, and just as it hit me, as he stumbled backward and felt its razor-sharp claws ripping through his armor. But before hound could do anything, black chain with razor-sharp tip emerged from the ground and tied it to the ground. Then they started to pull it away from Percy. Then suddenly, with a flock of crows, Naruto raised from the ground like a ghost. He was wearing standard Anbu uniform consisting of black and gray armor, metal arm guards and fingerless gloves, black boots, 3 ninja pouches on his waist. On his back there was symbol like Uchiha's red eyes, and he had a black bracelet on his left shoulder, which was given by his great-grandfather. He looked at Annabeth and said, "Annabeth, take Percy with you." Annabeth nodded. She took Percy with her, but she saw black chains which were holding hound. They were coming out of his right hand. Naruto turned toward hound and pulled it near him using chains. When he few meters away from him, all chains were holding hound were vanished. Naruto disappeared with a burst of speed and reappeared front of the hound. He punched him and sent him skidding near water. His eyes turned an eternal Manjikyu Sharingan. A ball of black flame had formed in Naruto's right hand. Blaze release. Cry of the raven, he shouted and threw it up. It took a shape of a huge black raven and flew upward. With a loud cry, boom. It crashed down on the hound. All campers shocked. Someone from Aries' cabin shouted, "Whoa, that was awesome." After that, murmuring and whispering started in all campers. "How did? That was in Cree. He is looking hot." Naruto's sweat dropped at the last comment. He saw many of the girls from all different cabins have a predator-like the look on their face, while girls from Aphrodite cabin was blushing madly. "Please, no fangirls please, no fangirls please," Naruto started to pray. Annabeth looked toward where hound was. She saw hound wasn't there, but she noticed black flames were still burning there. Most shocking things were they were burning on the surface of the water. "What kind of fire is this?" "It is burning on the surface of water," Annabeth said. "This is the jet black flames of the Amaterasu. They are as hot as the sun," someone said, from behind her. She turned around and saw it was Mr. D. Amaterasu is said to never stop burning, even when whatever is caught by the Amaterasu is completely reduced to ash or destroyed, it can still continue burning for 7 days and 7 nights. It cannot be extinguished with water or any other normal methods. Blue came over, the banner in his hand forgotten, his moment of glory gone. Jiren came near Mr. D. Die Immortals. He said. "That's a hellhound from the fields of punishment. They're not supposed to hear." "Someone summoned it," Mr. D said. "Someone inside the camp." Clarice heard it. She pointed at Percy and yelled, "It's all Percy's faults. Percy summoned it." "Be quiet, child," Jiren told her. Naruto saw a black flame on water surface. He has made some hand gesture and all flame disappeared with that. "You're wounded," Annabeth told Percy. "Quick, Percy, gets in the water." "I'm okay." "No, you're not," Annabeth said. "Jiren, watch this." Percy was too tired to argue. He stepped back into the creek, the whole camp gathering around him. Instantly, Percy felt better. All saw cuts on his chest closing up. Some of the campers gasped. "Look, I don't know why," Percy said, trying to apologize. "I'm sorry." He noticed they weren't watching his wounds heal. They were staring at something above his head. "Percy," Annabeth said, pointing. By the time Percy looked up, the sign was already fading, but he could still make out the hologram of green light, spinning and gleaming. A 3-tipped spear. A trident. "Your father," Annabeth murmured. "This is really not good." "It is determined," Jiren announced. All around him, campers started kneeling, even the Aries cabin and Naruto, though they both didn't look happy about it. "My father?" Percy asked, completely bewildered. "Poseidon," said Jiren. "Earthshaker, Stormbringer, father of horses. Hail, Perseus Jackson, son of the sea god." Suddenly a bright light spread in the camp. All looked toward the light direction. They gasped when they saw 3 symbols above Naruto's head. The blood drained from Mr. D and Jiren's face when they saw a 3rd symbol. There were 3 symbols above Naruto. First one was the largest symbol and it was the golden helmet. Second was smaller than the first one, but larger than the last one. It was an 8-sided mirror and it was behind the Tori symbol. Last one was the smallest symbol and it looked like the 8 arrows in a radial pattern. "Hades of the underworld," Annabeth said. "But what about the other 2? Middle symbol is Amaterasu. She is a major deity of the Shinto religion. She is the goddess of the sun, but also of the universe," Jiren said. Naruto was surprised at this. "My dad is Hades surprised me, my mother's mother, my grandmother is Amaterasu. It shocked me. Last symbol must be my great-grandfather's." "And last one?" Clarice asked. "I never saw a symbol like this." "Whose symbol is this, Greek or Shinto?" It's a Greek symbol, Chiron said. He glanced at the Mr. D direction. This is a symbol of chaos, Mr. D said. All campers looked at him in confusion. He is the first immortal, the void from which everything has emerged, the oldest and strongest of the immortals. It is determined, Chiron announced. Naruto Uchiha is the son of Hades and related to Shinto goddess of the sun. Suddenly all three symbols above Naruto's head started to combine, and then they formed new symbols. It was the red circular symbol, with 4 concentric circles and 9 commas in them. The symbol was shown only for a few seconds, and then disappeared. No one, but only Chiron saw that symbol. He noticed the same symbol on Naruto's back. Whose symbol is this? He thought. This was part 1, on 100 likes part 2 will be uploaded. For now, you guys should watch this video, just click on it and I will see you all there.